Chapter 121, Ethan, recognizing the wisdom in the professor's decision to grant them access, expressed his gratitude. Thank you, professors, for placing your trust in us. Please rest assured that we will exercise this power with the utmost discretion. Leading the way, Ethan and his companions entered the gate and traversed a lengthy passage until they arrived at the legendary underground cave. The cave was a vast natural formation, its interior rugged yet spacious, a result of the goblins' efforts to widen the paths by tunneling, a rare beneficial act from them. Despite its underground location, the cave was illuminated by moonlight filtering through cracks that connected to the surface above, making it significantly brighter than during the day. The cave was a thriving ecosystem, with underground streams nurturing moss, ferns, and even flowers and trees. As they explored, the trio encountered numerous decayed skeletons, most of which were smaller than humans, though a few were significantly larger. These remains belonged to the original goblin army and their domesticated troll enforcers, with relatively few human skeletons among them. After about 10 minutes, they reached a gate guarded by two 5-meter-tall demon statues wielding 4-meter-long giant swords. These statues sprang to life at their approach. Ethan and his companions, possessing the power of guardians, were expected to face these formidable adversaries. Ethan, in his chimera form, alternated between lightning breath and acid breath attacks, eventually overcoming the steel golems after a 20-minute battle. Upon their defeat, the golems' giant swords ignited, activating ancient magical runes on the gate. Beyond the gate lay a treasure trove of sealed power. The space, once a lavishly decorated grotto, now bore a minimalist appearance due to the destruction wrought by war. The walls and floor were adorned with complex magical patterns, and at the center hung a sphere crafted from fairy metal, containing a glowing white energy orb. Closer inspection revealed intermittent black and red waves beneath the white light, signaling the presence of a terrifying, restless energy. Ethan recognized this as akin to the black mud in the Holy Grail, representing the world's accumulated evil. This was the power of negative emotions collected by the sinner, Isidora Morgana. Ethan understood that this power was akin to a time bomb, as it was uncontrollable by anyone other than guardians versed in ancient magic, who had no choice but to seal it away. Isidora Morgana's masters, the 4 guardians depicted in the portrait outside, had been unable to destroy this power and had opted to seal it instead. The guardian transfer students of the previous generation, even after defeating the fairy landlock and recollecting the power of negative emotions, found themselves unable to destroy it and were forced to continue its containment. Now, with no guardians present, the question loomed: if this power were to erupt, who could manage it? The magic of emotions is not just a theoretical concern, but a tangible threat that must be addressed. The power of wizards is not only intrinsic to their own abilities, but also directly linked to magical creatures. It's a well-established fact within the magical biology community that magic can give birth to magical creatures. For instance, smaller magical beings such as boggarts, ghouls, and potato spirits often come into existence due to the residual magical energy from wizards' lives. An extreme manifestation of this phenomenon is the creation of pranksters, who typically emerge in environments where young wizards congregate, like magic schools. These entities, like Peeves at Hogwarts, are born from the collective negative emotions of young wizards, including their depression, desire for play, and penchant for mischief. The immense concentration and compression of negative emotions present a significant risk. Should there be any leakage, a powerful dark creature might emerge. In its current state, this situation, while dangerous, is still relatively contained. However, if the seal were to be further compromised, allowing all the negative emotions to escape, the consequences for Hogwarts could be catastrophic. One might wonder if Hogwarts could transform into a magical equivalent of a disaster zone, akin to Fukushima or Chernobyl, with all nearby wizards contaminated by a dark miasmic energy. It's conceivable that the magic could erupt spontaneously, elevating Hogwarts to the status of a floating city without Ethan's intervention. But how could Hogwarts possibly become a floating city without Ethan's involvement? Thus, he must take control of this power. How about it, Ethan? Can you harness this power? Hermione asked, visibly anxious as she gazed at the massive seal before her. Merely being in its proximity made her feel a strong sense of oppression and malice. She found it difficult to imagine anyone being capable of absorbing such power. "I think we'd better leave it here," Ethan replied with conviction. "How can we do that? How can we allow something like this to remain beneath Hogwarts?" Ethan argued, surprising the two girls. "Are you serious?" In her heart, Hermione didn't see Ethan as that kind of person. She knew him well enough to understand that, at his core, Ethan was still a selfish individual, only inclined to help others when his own interests and safety were assured. "When have I ever been anything but sincere?" Ethan retorted, his expression one of aggrieved innocence, which made Shiri feel guilty. It was hard to believe he was genuinely a good person, committed to doing what was right. Had she really misjudged him? On the other hand, Hermione was both relieved and concerned. "Ethan, what are you planning to do? If it's too dangerous, you don't have to go through with it. We can inform Dumbledore." Ethan shook his head as he approached the seal. "Don't rely on Dumbledore. He's not omnipotent. Only I can resolve this issue." With that, Ethan positioned himself beneath the seal. Here he could feel the sealed power more intensely than ever, and even a minor leakage of its monstrous malice was enough to drive ordinary people to madness. Ethan, however, could withstand the influence of this force, thanks to his strong mental fortitude and spiritual barriers. To transform negative emotions into positive ones and malice into goodwill, ordinary magic won't suffice, Ethan stated. "Arcane mages aren't equipped to handle this kind of problem, but that doesn't matter. I still have the power of nature. Let Mother Nature purify this evil force." With a determined expression, Ethan stood under the seal, spread his arms, closed his eyes, and began to channel the natural energy surrounding him. Command plant, revitalization, highly increased resistance, healing spirit, 4 natural barriers, 4-fold natural purification, 4-fold plant growth. Druidic spells flowed from Ethan in rapid succession, depleting his energy, yet amplifying the natural power around him. Eventually, the 2 women behind him witnessed the cave's ceiling crack open. However, this was not a sign of impending collapse. Instead, thick roots penetrated the rock formations, growing downward and encasing the seal's top. Simultaneously, beneath Ethan's feet and all around, flowers and green grass sprouted wildly, accompanied by the growth of several oak trees, transforming the ominous atmosphere into one of vibrant life and renewal. Trees erupted from the ground, swiftly growing into towering figures that encircled the base of the seal. Vines climbed upwards, wrapping around the entire seal. Under Ethan's guidance, the roots above and the oak trees below intertwined, forming a vast temple that enveloped the seal. Ethan then performed the daylight technique repeatedly, ensuring it permanently illuminated the temple, replacing natural sunlight with magical luminescence. Thus, an underground natural temple was conceived. At the heart of the temple, Ethan placed the scholar's moonstone on an altar, which had formed naturally from branches beneath the seal. This Druidic heritage artifact, with its millennia of history and rich symbolism, was designated as the sacred object of the temple, acting as the suppression seal. The moment Ethan set the scholar's moonstone down, even the portrait in the secret room on the map sensed a profound and sacred force. This was not the power of gods, but the will of nature itself manifesting. Druids, in essence, serve as a type of priest, wielding divine magic sourced not from gods, but from nature itself. Hence, Druids excel in powerful rituals that harness nature's forces, and crafting such ritualistic spaces is within their expertise. In certain contexts, nature itself can equate to a deity, as evidenced within this temple. Within the seal, negative and malevolent emotions were instantly subdued, and the temple's hopeful energy began to gradually purify them. Ethan estimated that it would take no more than 2 to 3 years for these negative emotions to be fully cleansed and transformed into pure emotional energy. This energy would then be used to create the spiritual foundation for heroic spirits, according to Ethan's plan. Had the energy remained tainted, Ethan would have refrained from using it as a spiritual foundation, recognizing its potentially corrupting influence. Utilizing such energy could result in the creation of an alter Ravenclaw, imbued with all the evil in this world. Accepting it without caution could have consequences beyond divine intervention. From this perspective, Ethan's earlier assurances to the portraits were not mere boasts. By purifying the power through the natural temple, he could eliminate its inherent risks. Thus, he could confidently claim that his presence was indeed a boon for Hogwarts. Update 5 Forward, additional update. Publishing new books is a challenging endeavor. I kindly request your support through custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. Your votes are particularly crucial to me and greatly appreciated. Chapter 122, Ethan's Feat. Ethan's creation of a natural temple with the power to purify negative emotions was not only warmly received by his 2 female companions, but also earned high praise from the 4 portraits. Professor Rackham, the divination professor, had previously suggested that Ethan's animagus form, a synthetic beast representing the 4 major houses, was due to his embodiment of their finest qualities. Initially, this might have seemed like mere encouragement, but now, in the eyes of the 4 professors immortalized in portraits, Ethan truly symbolized the admirable traits of all 4 houses. To elaborate, Ethan's bravery and boldness in facing challenges mirrored the courage of Gryffindor. His inventive spells and clever tactics in battle showcased the erudition, wisdom, and intelligence characteristic of Ravenclaw. By valuing his own judgment over the advice of his professors and leading his companions, Ethan demonstrated the ambition, cunning, and leadership inherent to Slytherin. Lastly, his willingness to confront danger and create the temple, thereby addressing a significant threat to Hogwarts, highlighted the diligence, kindness, loyalty, honesty, and fairness of Hufflepuff. Ethan felt somewhat embarrassed by this lavish praise, questioning if his actions were truly altruistic or if he was seeking to establish a heroic legacy for himself. However, the portrait's admiration was understandable given Ethan's resolution of a long-standing issue that had plagued Hogwarts for centuries. This evil magic, responsible for a series of tragedies, was indirectly caused by the 4 professors themselves. They had mentored Morgana, but failed to guide her properly, leading to disaster. Now, by resolving this issue, Ethan had lifted a great burden from their shoulders, making him a significant benefactor to the Guardian lineage. As a mark of gratitude, the portraits agreed to teach Ethan all the techniques for crafting ancient magic golems. They also granted him unrestricted access to a secret room and its underlying cave until the next Guardian emerged, effectively expanding Ethan's secret base at Hogwarts. With this adventure behind them, life for Ethan and his friends returned to its usual rhythm. They attended classes, borrowed books from the restricted section, practiced Quidditch, and took weekend night walks in the Forbidden Forest, visiting the Unicorn Larry and the Centaur Druid West. As late autumn arrived, a sudden cold wave from East Greenland swept over Hogwarts, leading to a widespread outbreak of colds among students and professors. This left Madame Pomfrey overwhelmed, and even Professor Snape enlisted Ethan's help in brewing potions. Snape remarked that while most student-brewed potions were barely fit for ghouls, Ethan's concoctions were of a quality that even muggles and squibs could appreciate. "Ethan, you're quite a nice person." To combat the cold, they needed to brew a revitalizing potion. Although effective immediately, it caused those who drank it to emit smoke from their ears for several hours. Amidst this, Lockhart, whose reputation had suffered, attempted to offer Madame Pomfrey some recipes. For treating colds, Lockhart boasted, "No one knows colds better than me." Ironically, he soon caught a cold himself. As a reward, Snape gave him a bottle of a concentrated version of the refreshing potion, which left Lockhart's mind racing for days. This was the first time Ethan found Snape rather agreeable. The weather in Scotland took a turn for the worse, plunging Hogwarts into what seemed like an endless rainy season. Raindrops, large as bullets, relentlessly pelted the castle windows. The Black Lake's water level rose, flooding the flower beds with mud. Hagrid's pumpkins, intended for Halloween, swelled to the size of garden sheds. As Halloween approached, the castle filled with the sweet scent of pumpkin, signaling the festive season. The students eagerly prepared for the Halloween party. The Great Hall was adorned with live bats and giant pumpkins carved into lanterns, including a small, pumpkin castle large enough for 3 people. A giant black spider, perched atop a web in the auditorium's porch, occasionally twitched its hairy legs, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Steve confided in Ethan that Dumbledore had arranged for a skeleton dance troupe to perform, leaving Ethan bemused at the thought of dancing skeletons. Ethan realized this was an opportunity to utilize his necromancy spells, which he seldom used to avoid tarnishing his reputation. Most of his arcane magic was applied to learning and combat, but necromancy was a delicate matter due to its association with death and the undead. While discussing the skeleton dance company, Ethan and Steve encountered the Gryffindor trio conversing with nearly headless Nick. Nick reminded Harry of his Death Day party, which Harry had nearly forgotten. Previously, Harry had been caught by Filch and with Nick's intervention, narrowly escaped punishment. In return, Harry had promised to attend Nick's party. Ethan mentioned that Nick had also invited him to another ghost's Death Day party, but he had declined. It seemed Harry and Ron were the only ones who had been persuaded to attend. Ron, regretting his decision, wished he could claim a stomachache to avoid going. Harry agreed, lamenting the loss of the Halloween feast and Dumbledore's entertaining antics. However, Hermione, holding Ethan's arm, insisted on the importance of keeping their promise, despite her own reluctance to miss the Halloween festivities for a gloomy gathering with ghosts. Seeing Hermione choose to accompany Ethan to the grand feast, leaving them to fulfill their obligation, Harry and Ron felt a mix of disappointment and resignation. Feeling even more uneasy, Ethan handed them 2 pieces of black bread before leaving. Harry, looking puzzled, accepted the coarse bread. The house elves at Hogwarts were renowned for their culinary skills, making the food there far superior to anything else in the Great Britain. Accustomed to the delicacies of Hogwarts, Harry remarked that not even a dog would eat this black bread. "Take it for now, Harry. You'll need it later," Ethan said with a smug tone. The two were unaware that it was impossible for a ghost's banquet to include food meant for the living. In reality, ghosts preferred foods with intense flavors due to their diminished sense of taste. Delicacies like stinky tofu and durian were nothing to them. What they truly enjoyed were burnt or moldy foods because of their strong odors. Also, when the time comes, could you help me check if the famous Louis XVI is among the Headless Horseman hunters? Ethan added. Chapter 123. Leaving aside the unfortunate encounter that Harry and Ron were about to face, the Halloween banquet in the auditorium was soon underway. The entire hall was adorned with lights and candles, casting a golden glow over the tables set with gold plates, which looked particularly enticing under the candlelight. Just as the young wizards were eagerly anticipating the feast, a misty singing voice suddenly filled the auditorium, silencing all other noises. The room fell quiet as everyone looked around, trying to locate the source of the singing. Amidst a cloud of smoke, a line of skeletons dressed in lavish and exaggerated attire emerged from beneath the floor, moving their bones in an exaggerated fashion in time with the music. The sudden appearance of the skeletons startled many of the younger witches, causing them to scream, but they soon realized that these were performers from afar, fulfilling Dumbledore's promise to invite the skeleton dance troupe. Suddenly, another platform rose among the skeletons, and atop it stood a skeleton dressed as a woman. The singing emanated from her, and despite her jaw appearing empty and moving comically as she sang, the performance was captivating. The combination of the skeleton's eerie singing and their mechanical dancing created a bizarre, spooky, yet joyful atmosphere. However, the young wizards found the dance somewhat lackluster, and their attention began to wane until the music on stage took a sudden turn. The ethereal, slow-paced music swiftly transformed into a fast-paced rhythm, and the lyrics shifted from old-fashioned songs to more contemporary ones. "It's close to midnight. Something evil's lurking in the dark." The skeletons' dance moves also became more dynamic, and despite their inherent stiffness, there was a rhythmic vitality to their movements that was infectious. The young wizards' excitement was rekindled, and they watched the stage in amazement. Many of the older Muggle-born wizards recognized the song, while Dumbledore, seated at the teacher's table, frowned, puzzled. "I don't recall ordering this music. What's the name of this song? It sounds quite catchy." Then he noticed Ethan at the Ravenclaw table, waving his wand like a conductor at the skeleton dance troupe. Although unsure of how Ethan managed it, Dumbledore felt a sense of relief, knowing that it was a student's mischief rather than a malicious act. At the Ravenclaw table, Ethan continued to wield his wand, directing the impromptu performance. Utilizing spells from the necromancy school, such as controlling the dead, magic mouth technique, and phantom sound technique, he successfully commandeered the skeleton dance troupe to perform his chosen piece. The skeletons executed the dance moves with precision, their mechanical movements synchronized with the music's beat. The magical choreography inspired many of the young wizards to join in, mimicking the dance moves. The skeleton singer belted out the lyrics with gusto, "'Cause this is Thriller night, and no one's gonna save you from the beast about to strike." The lively lyrics had many wizards singing along, transforming the once dull performance into a vibrant disco scene. As the music concluded after an exhilarating 10 minutes, the young wizards continued to tap their knives and forks against their gold plates, whistling, clapping, and cheering loudly. The skeleton dance troupe took a bow and retreated underground, leaving behind a wave of thunderous applause in the auditorium. Many Ravenclaws like Ethan had realized that he had secretly altered the performance. What wonderful music! Our thanks to the Skeleton Dance Company and Mr. Green for the performance, Professor Dumbledore announced, standing at the center of the stage and wiping away imaginary tears. Ethan stood amidst the applause, his eyes gleaming with emotion. The applause intensified as the young wizards realized that Ethan was not only a master of magic, but also possessed an undeniable charisma. Accepting everyone's praise with a smile, Ethan felt confident that his talents would allow him to dominate the entertainment industry in the wizarding world after graduation. "So next, let us celebrate and eat with ease," he announced, marking the official start of the Halloween party. The feast was thoroughly enjoyed by all, and as Ethan savored his dessert, he couldn't help but think of the two unfortunate individuals who had attended the death anniversary party. They were likely facing a dismal meal of rotting kitchen waste and raw black bread to satiate their hunger, yet their fate might soon become even more dire. After dinner, Ethan joined the bustling crowd, leaving the auditorium. As they ascended the stairs, the lively chatter abruptly ceased. The students at the front halted, confronted by a chilling scene. Between two windows, a message hovered a foot above the ground, its letters shimmering in the torchlight. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware." Below the ominous warning, Mrs. Norris, the beloved cat of caretaker Filch, was suspended by her tail from a torch bracket, her body rigid, her eyes wide open in a fixed stare. A puddle of water lay beneath her on the corridor floor. Harry and Ron stood near the wall, their faces etched with panic, yet their expressions hinted at a deeper understanding of the situation. "It wasn't me," Harry began, but before he could elaborate, Malfoy pushed through the crowd. His eyes sparkled with malice, and his usually pale face flushed with excitement. He turned his gaze from the message to the surrounding students, and then to Hermione, the Muggle-born girl who had previously humiliated him. "Enemies of the air! Beware, you're next, Mud." Malfoy's taunt was abruptly cut off as he found himself unable to speak. Suddenly, he realized that everyone around him seemed to have grown larger. No, he had shrunk. Looking at his hands, he saw they were now brown-green, slimy, and webbed. He had been transformed into a toad. Ethan stepped forward from the crowd, effortlessly picking Malfoy up from the ground. When Malfoy's cronies attempted to intervene, Ethan didn't even turn around or draw his wand. Instead, a thick puddle of oil materialized under their feet, causing them to slip and fall, just as they had during a previous encounter on the Quidditch pitch. "Clearly, you haven't learned your lesson," Ethan remarked, looking at the trembling toad in his grasp. "Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'm merely curious. Who gave you the audacity to speak to me like that again, huh?" Malfoy attempted to respond, but could only emit an unpleasant croak. Ethan shook his head dismissively. "Your good-for-nothing father can't control me, even if he is a school governor," he said. "I hope this is the last time I hear the word mudblood from your mouth. Otherwise—" Ethan trailed off, making a gesture over the toad's belly with his wand. "Just be prepared to remain a toad for the rest of your life." With that, he tossed Malfoy into the air, and the spell was reversed, returning him to his human form. Malfoy screamed in horror, wet himself, gathered his cronies, and fled. In the ensuing silence, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. The professors were coming. Chapter 124. What happened? What happened? The first to arrive at the scene of the incident, without even pausing to lament the tragedy that had befallen Malfoy, was none other than Administrator Filch. He made his way through the crowd, his shoulders pushing past students. Upon seeing Mrs. Norris, he stumbled backward, horror etched on his face as he clutched at it with his hands. "My cat! What happened to my cat, Mrs. Norris?" he screamed. Then, his eyes, wide with shock, landed on Harry. "You," he bellowed, "you killed my cat! I'm gonna kill you!" Ethan observed the distraught administrator and with a hint of pity, interjected, "Mr. Filch, Mrs. Norris isn't dead. She's just been petrified." Filch trembled, hope flickering in his eyes. "Really? You swear? Oh no, Mrs. Norris, she has." At that moment, the crowd parted, making way for Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall. Headmaster Dumbledore, look at Mrs. Norris," Filch pleaded, desperation in his voice. Dumbledore surveyed the students and the ominous writing on the wall before approaching the stiff form of Mrs. Norris. He examined her closely, with Filch anxiously waiting behind him. "Principal, Mr. Green mentioned she's not dead. Is that true?" Filch asked, seeking confirmation. Dumbledore nodded. "She's still alive," he confirmed, offering a glimmer of hope as he addressed the petrified cat. "Come with me, Filch," he said gently. "Oh, and Mr. Green, Mr. Potter, and Mr. Weasley, I need your assistance with something. The rest of you, please return to your dormitories." Lockhart, ever eager, stepped forward. "My office is the closest, Headmaster. It's just over here. You can use it," he offered. "Thank you, Gilderoy," Dumbledore replied, as the silent crowd made way for them. Lockhart, thrilled by the acknowledgement, followed Dumbledore closely, already imagining how he would recount this event in his next book. He positioned himself prominently, while Professor McGonagall and Snape trailed behind. Hermione, not wanting to leave Ethan's side, stayed close. Once in Lockhart's office, Dumbledore placed Mrs. Norris on the desk and began a thorough examination, inquiring about the incident from the young wizards. Meanwhile, Harry, Ethan, and Hermione exchanged knowing glances out of Dumbledore's sight. Harry silently mouthed to Ethan and Hermione, "I had nothing to do with this." However, he quickly stopped himself upon noticing Snape lurking in the shadows behind them, his gaze fixed on Harry with an unsettling intensity. Harry recalled Ethan's comments about Professor Snape's menacing presence and humorously thought he'd gladly donate his hair for Snape to fashion into a wig if it meant being spared from his scrutiny. Lockhart was the most animated among those present, buzzing around Dumbledore with endless suggestions and commentary. "It must have been a spell. Perhaps the transformation torture charm. I've encountered it numerous times. It's a shame I wasn't there. I know the counter curse that could have saved her." Dumbledore remained silent, focusing on Mrs. Norris. Lockhart, undeterred, continued, "I recall a similar incident in Ouagadougou, referencing his autobiography. I provided amulets to the locals, and the problem was resolved immediately." His rambling was cut short by Dumbledore's conclusion. Mrs. Norris was petrified. "Ah, I suspected as much," Lockhart quickly agreed, as if he hadn't been proposing a different theory moments earlier. "No one is more familiar with the petrification charm than I am." Ethan and the others struggled to contain their laughter behind their hands. Harry, in particular, found it amusing. Despite being duped by Lockhart in defense against the dark arts class, he couldn't help but find the professor's antics somewhat entertaining. However, his amusement was short-lived as Filch once again directed his anger towards Harry. "It must have been Harry. You saw what he—" "Harry, what did you do to me?" After being metaphorically slapped in the face by the speed of light, Lockhart noticed the students laughing at him and quickly tried to deflect the conflict. "I didn't touch it at all," Harry exclaimed. "By the time I got there, it had already fallen to the ground." "Please allow me to interrupt, Principal," Snape suddenly said. "Certainly," Dumbledore nodded. "Perhaps Potter was simply not meant to be in that place at that time," Snape suggested, much to Harry's surprise. He couldn't believe Snape was defending him, but then he realized he might be overthinking it. But we are faced with a series of questions. Why was he in the corridor above? Why did he skip the Halloween party? Snape pressed. I went to Nick's death day party. There were hundreds of ghosts there who can vouch for my presence, Harry quickly explained, though no ghost was present to confirm his story. Suddenly, he turned to Ethan. By the way, Ethan and Hermione were with us before we went to the death day party. They can vouch for us. Ethan nodded in agreement. Yes, I saw them go to the death day party with my own eyes. But why not attend the banquet afterward? Snape asked, his dark eyes gleaming in the candlelight. Why go to the corridor above? Because, Harry stammered, then lied. I was tired and wanted to go to bed. Not having dinner? Snape probed further. I presume the food offered by ghosts at the party isn't quite suitable for the living. Because of you, we were full. We had brown bread. Ron interjected loudly, pulling out a thumb-sized crumb from his pocket. The long-stored black bread was as hard as a brick, opting for black bread over the banquet's delicacies. Snape's sneer was evident. Because I like brown bread, Ron blurted out without hesitation. As if to prove his point, he threw the piece of hard black bread into his mouth and started chewing it. Ethan thought it sounded like chewing bricks. In the end, Dumbledore had the final word. Harry is innocent until proven guilty, Severus. He then turned to the aggrieved Filch. Causing petrification requires profound dark magic, something second-year students couldn't possibly achieve. Ethan shook his head secretly behind them. In truth, he had mastered the spells petrification and removal of petrification after reaching level 11 wizard and specializing in transformation school. This wasn't the temporary stiffness caused by petrification, but a real petrification similar to Medusa's gaze, and it was irreversible by ordinary means. However, Ethan had no intention of revealing his capabilities just yet. The attention he garnered at the Halloween banquet was sufficient for now. While he understood the importance of maintaining his reputation among the young wizards, he didn't need to expose his abilities again so soon. Mrs. Norris's situation wasn't dire enough to warrant his intervention, unless the threat of petrification became more widespread and the school struggled to respond. Only then, when panic reached a certain level, would it be the right time to act. For now, teasing Dumbledore in moderation was his plan. Dumbledore continued to reassure Filch. Mrs. Sprout has planted some mandrakes this term. Once they mature, I have a potion that can revive Mrs. Norris. I'll make it. Lockhart interjected confidently. I've made the Mandrake Resurrection Potion hundreds of times. I can make it in my sleep. No one knows the potion better than I do. Understanding and patience filled the room as they navigated the complexities of their magical world, each with their own secrets and skills, yet united in their efforts to protect and educate. Ethan muttered under his breath, questioning why anyone would bother competing with a man named Trump who claimed to understand Buddhism in the West. It seemed like an absurd comparison to him. Just as he expected, a retort was quick to follow. You don't need to do that, Snape interjected sharply, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'm the potions teacher. That's a shame, Lockhart responded, unable to hide his disappointment. He shook his head, adding, Snape, you will regret it. Despite the tension, the situation eventually reached a preliminary resolution. Ethan and the three others with him were finally able to leave Snape and Lockhart behind and return to their dormitory. The air felt lighter as they distanced themselves from the confrontation, each step taking them closer to the familiar comfort of their own space. Chapter 125. Hermione was bold when she decided to join the investigation team, but as they made their way back to the lounge from the office, she clung tightly to Ethan's arm. It seemed she feared a sudden attack. This gesture caught Harry and Ron's attention, indicating that the incident with Filch had indeed frightened her. Ethan sensed her fear and allowed the intimate gesture, understanding her need for reassurance. Yet, the truly unfortunate ones were oblivious to the looming troubles. Ethan glanced at Harry, the boy who lived, with a look of pity, which puzzled Harry. Why did Ethan look at him with such an expression again? In Lockhart's office, Ethan had sensed that Dumbledore might have had an inkling about the source of the attacks. He believed they were somehow connected to Harry Potter. Harry's excuse for missing the Halloween feast was too flimsy, especially considering Ron's unlikely sacrifice of the feast for mere black bread. Ethan mused that believing Harry's story was as absurd as believing he was Qin Shi Huang. The real reason Harry missed the banquet was that he heard a whisper in Parseltongue, a sound no one else could detect. Dumbledore, with his expertise, should have been able to identify the issue. If he truly prioritized student safety, he would have probed further into Harry's experiences. Such inquiries could have pinpointed the attack's origin, potentially averting the crises that unfolded in the original story. Yet, Dumbledore chose to use this as a learning opportunity for Harry, a decision that Ethan found perplexing. Wasn't the safety of the students Dumbledore's primary concern? Ethan worried that Harry, unlike himself, might not withstand such trials unscathed. Upon reaching the Gryffindor lounge, Hermione's grip on Ethan's clothes tightened, her knuckles white. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked gently. Hermione, struggling to hold back tears, whispered about her unease and questioned the extent of pure-blood family's hatred towards Muggle-born wizards. Ethan sighed, understanding the root of Hermione's distress. The night's events had deeply affected her, stirring fears of being targeted due to her heritage. He explained that, like Muggles, pure-blood wizards were a diverse group, with both good and bad among them. He emphasized the importance of personal strength in overcoming prejudice and adversity. If you are weak, others might bully you for any reason. But when you're strong, they can only resent you in silence, Ethan explained, highlighting the power of strength in commanding respect and deterring hostility. Hermione was taken aback by Ethan's blunt words, her initial impulse to argue tempered by the realization of the harsh realities of their world. Ethan shook his head. "If it were me, I'd rather be called overbearing than be unable to call someone else overbearing after being bullied. What's more, if you think this kind of thing is overbearing and the world is unfair, then you should make yourself stronger, because only the strong can make the rules. If you are strong enough, you can naturally make it illegal to discriminate against Muggles. You can follow your wishes, and the world will become fair and just." "You are being unreasonable." Hermione initially wanted to retort. Ethan's words challenged her beliefs, but her experiences with Ethan had shown her that his perspective was valid. For instance, Malfoy dared to insult her, but no one in Slytherin dared to do the same to Ethan. After today, Malfoy would probably think twice before speaking to him in such a manner. This was all a deterrent based on Ethan's strength. I understand." Finally, the young witch nodded vigorously. "I will work hard to make myself stronger." "Then go for it," Ethan said, gently touching her curly hair. "But don't worry too much, because before you become strong, I will still be by your side." After watching Hermione return to the Gryffindor common room, Ethan immediately left. However, he did not head directly back to Ravenclaw Tower, but instead, under the cover of an invisibility spell, made his way to the abandoned girls' bathroom on the 3rd floor. This was the location where the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets was hidden in the original story. At this time, Moaning Myrtle was not in the bathroom, allowing Ethan to quietly approach the sink and search for a brief moment. He found the tap with a small snake engraved on the side. According to the original story, saying "open to it" in Parseltongue would open the passage to the Chamber of Secrets. Ethan attempted to say "open," but then realized he was using human language and Parseltongue was not triggered. After a moment of thought, he understood why. His ability, Animal Talk, was not Parseltongue. As a spell, Animal Talk had specific trigger conditions. He needed to speak to the corresponding animal, and inanimate objects could not trigger Animal Talk. Seeing no results, Ethan obediently returned to his dormitory. It seemed that directly entering the Chamber of Secrets to solve the problem was too convenient to be true. In that case, he decided to leave such troubles to Dumbledore's chosen savior to investigate. As for Ethan, if he encountered the basilisk, he would simply take care of it. If he didn't encounter it, he would pretend it didn't exist. For Ethan at this point, this was not a significant issue. If those around him were petrified, he had the ability to break the curse without needing Mandrake Restorative Drought. Even if they were unlucky enough to be killed by a basilisk's gaze, he could directly revive them with the rejuvenation elixir made from the Philosopher's Stone. The only concern was that he needed to be the first to reach the scene after their death, to prevent their bodies from being discovered by others before he could resurrect them. Otherwise, to avoid exposing the rejuvenation elixir, he would have to use the memory charm liberally. Chapter 126. Starting from the second day, the hottest topic at Hogwarts was the Chamber of Secrets and the heir of Slytherin. The students were abuzz with discussions about the attack on Mrs. Norris for several days. Filch's behavior ensured that no one could forget the incident. He was often seen near the site of Mrs. Norris's attack, as if he expected the perpetrator to return. Ethan observed him attempting, futilely, to clean the writing off the wall with Mrs. Skoll's all-purpose miracle stain remover, despite the fact that such magical inscriptions could only be removed with magic. This persistent writing on the wall, left untouched by Professor Dumbledore's orders, served as a constant reminder to the students. The Chamber of Secrets had been opened, and the school was in danger. Consequently, the students became more cautious, with fewer venturing out for nocturnal walks. Many were also scouring the library for any clues about the chamber, though it remained shrouded in mystery, barely mentioned in a handful of books. Ethan mused that if Tom Riddle hadn't opened the chamber and killed Myrtle during his time at Hogwarts, the legend might have faded into obscurity. Ethan also took precautions against the basilisk. After visiting Larry and Daisy, he headed to Hagrid's hut, intending to ask for some roosters in advance to protect against the creature. The original perpetrator had killed all of Hagrid's roosters to prevent any interference with the basilisk. Ethan wondered if the mastermind could tamper with his demiplane as easily as they had with Hagrid's hut. Upon reaching the chicken coop, he discovered someone had already acted. Ginny Weasley, under the diary's control, stood before him, her hair as red as flames, a clear giveaway of her identity. Inside the coop, several roosters lay dead, while the others panicked, trapped by the fence that was meant to protect them. Ethan knew he couldn't let her kill all the roosters. He quickly cast instant hypnosis to gain the upper hand, prepared for a confrontation. Despite expecting a tough battle against the Horcrux-controlled Ginny, Ethan was surprised when she fell into a deep sleep and collapsed. This outcome left Ethan feeling uneasy, as if he had ambushed a fellow student. To safeguard against any attacks from the Horcrux, Ethan placed an anti-evil magic circle around himself before checking on Ginny. She appeared pale and physically weakened, a stark contrast to the vibrant girl seen at the start of the school year, clearly drained of much vitality. However, Ethan found no signs of possession, suggesting that the influence of the diary might not be as straightforward as he had anticipated. The diary was not in her possession. However, upon probing her mind, it was discovered that her memory was fragmented, with significant gaps, and her most recent memories were particularly disordered. It appeared that the diary, beyond its ability to control her through possession, was now influencing her to kill the roosters, likely through some form of mental suggestion. Fortunately, Ethan arrived in time, and several roosters were still alive. He selected a few hens and all the remaining roosters, transporting them into the courtyard of the tower using the mansion technique. There, he constructed a temporary chicken coop to house the birds. After returning to Hagrid's hut, Ethan cast the rejuvenation spell on Ginny. Her complexion immediately brightened, ensuring she wouldn't succumb to the diary's draining effects too quickly. While she was still under the diary's hypnotic influence, he concealed Ginny in the straw of the chicken shed and returned to the castle. Unable to locate the diary, he chose not to reveal himself, to avoid tipping off the enemy. Ginny, confused by the mental suggestion, was unaware of Ethan's intervention. Upon waking, she would likely attribute the incident to an accident or the diary's influence, without suspecting Ethan's involvement. The next day, Saturday, coincided with a Gryffindor Quidditch match. Ethan discreetly observed the Griffey Endor team, noting that Ginny appeared at breakfast looking healthy and normal, having not disclosed her ordeal to anyone. This secrecy likely stemmed from her fear of being perceived as the heir of Slytherin. The atmosphere at the Gryffindor table was tense, with the Quidditch team members sitting together in silence, their nerves palpable. They were daunted by the prospect of facing Slytherin, who boasted 7 Nimbus 2001 brooms. The importance of equipment was well known, yet Gryffindor's morale was consistently low before matches, casting doubt on their chances of victory. As the match approached at 11 o'clock, Ethan followed the crowd to the Quidditch pitch. The weather was hot and humid, with thunder rumbling in the distance, signaling an impending heavy rain. On the field, Gryffindor struggled, but Harry persisted, battling not only Slytherin's aggressive tactics, but also the adverse weather and a rogue bludger. Laughter erupted from the Slytherin stands as Harry dodged the bludger while still managing to pursue the golden snitch. "Harry's doing quite well," Cyrilla remarked, with Roger, the Ravenclaw captain, concurring. "Harry's flying skills are commendable. I doubt I could stay on my broom in his place. Malfoy is no match for Harry. Only you two could truly challenge him." Roger praised Harry's performance, viewing Gryffindor as a formidable opponent for Ravenclaw, with Ethan's support deemed crucial for Zhang-Chu to compete with Harry. As they discussed, the crowd gasped as the bludger struck Harry. He teetered on his rain-slicked broom, clinging on by the knee of one leg, his right hand dangling limply. "He caught the golden snitch," Roger exclaimed. Through the rain, Harry charged at Malfoy, who wore a mocking smile. "He's also aiming for Malfoy. He's quite the vengeful one," Ethan noted with a smile of approval. The crowd watched in suspense as Harry collided with Malfoy, water spraying in all directions. Harry and Draco collided mid-air, tumbling off their broomsticks and sliding through the mud. Draco landed on top of Harry, pinning him down awkwardly, with Harry's arms twisted at unnatural angles beneath him. Despite not sustaining serious injuries, Draco was visibly shaken, frantically trying to extricate himself and move away from Harry. The relentless rain pelted Harry's face as he lay groaning on the ground. Ethan, alerted by Ron and Hermione, hurried to the stadium to check on the situation. Note to readers: updating and publishing new chapters is a challenging task. Your support through comments, likes, and sharing is greatly appreciated. If you enjoy this story, please consider showing your support with reviews and rewards. Your encouragement is incredibly valuable and means a lot to the author. Thank you. Chapter 127. Without a moment's delay to mourn Harry's injury, Gilderoy Lockhart rushed into the stadium. He announced loudly to the anxious students surrounding him, "Don't worry, Harry. I'm here to treat your arm." "No, just leave it. Thank you." Harry attempted to protest. "Lie back, Harry," Lockhart said, offering a soothing smile. "It's a simple spell I've used countless times. No one knows how to heal arms better than I do." As he rolled up his emerald green sleeves, he commanded, "Everyone, please stand back." Don't do it," Harry begged weakly, having already seen through Lockhart's incompetence. In the end, Ethan, moved by kindness and unable to watch his friends suffer needlessly, secretly cast a counterspell. Consequently, just after Lockhart twirled his wand and chanted the spell, he found himself lying on the ground in a highly embarrassing position. His fall left him looking disheveled, his once clean coat now adorned with blades of grass. However, Lockhart had no time to worry about his appearance, as he discovered he couldn't feel his right leg at all. To his horror, he realized his leg had turned into a useless, thick appendage, completely devoid of bones. His spell had backfired spectacularly, removing all the bones from his right leg instead of healing Harry. The surrounding young wizards gasped at the sight. Harry felt even luckier for his narrow escape. Colin Creevey, who had come to take pictures of his idol Harry, found himself with an unexpected scoop as he captured Lockhart's misfortune. "Professor Lockhart is under his own spell. Everyone, send him to Madame Pomfrey," Ethan shouted, seizing the moment to take charge of the situation. Lockhart was then forced to consume a potion full of bone regrowth serum and spend the entire night in the infirmary, immobilized. The next day brought unexpected news. Colin Creevey had been attacked the previous night and was found petrified. "I heard he went to visit Professor Lockhart and brought him letters of condolence from his classmates," Zhang-Chu shared with Ethan during breakfast, adding, "Colin was holding a camera when he was attacked. I wonder if he managed to take a picture of the attacker." It seemed that unfortunate individuals, whether in the original story or now, who idolized the wrong person, often found themselves in trouble. "I heard from the seniors that Slytherin built a secret chamber in the castle. When his true heir arrives at the school, they can open the chamber and release the horrors within to purify the school of those deemed unworthy of learning magic," Hermione added, sharing the information she had gathered. Her eyes were tinged with melancholy, reflecting her concerns about her Muggle heritage. Ethan understood her worries and discreetly handed her an amulet adorned with 4 spells: Detect Hostility, 3 Rings of Protection from Evil, SMS, and Teleportation Rune. The Detect Hostility spell would allow her to sense an impending attack. The 3 Rings of Protection from Evil used a ring-enhancing technique to bolster its effectiveness. Although it couldn't completely repel a basilisk, it would make the creature uncomfortable enough to keep its distance from the amulet. The SMS and Teleportation Rune were both single-use and would need to be replenished by Ethan after being activated. The SMS would automatically send a warning message to Ethan if the amulet's wearer was attacked, and the Teleportation Rune would allow Ethan to teleport directly to the scene, enabling him to intervene promptly. Despite the Teleportation Rune containing relatively advanced magic, the amulet was simple to create, making it a practical tool for protection. Ethan had crafted it with care, hoping to offer some peace of mind amidst the growing dangers at Hogwarts. Ethan meticulously crafted a large batch of amulets, despite them being mass-produced. He drew inspiration from the aesthetic of ancient magic guardians, designing the amulets with silver metal vines that intertwined artistically. The front of each amulet featured an intellectual pattern, which Ethan had come to regard as his trademark following the incident with the last pirated book. He distributed these amulets to Siri and Hermione, as well as to Larry and Daisy in the Forbidden Forest. When the Weasley twins noticed Hermione's amulet, they approached Ethan to propose a collaboration. The attack on Colin had sparked rumors and fear among the students, particularly those of Muggle origin. Many began to move in groups, seeking protection in numbers. Without consulting the teachers, students started buying and exchanging amulets and other protective devices in large quantities. The Weasley twins saw an opportunity in this situation. With Ethan's expertise, they could offer something far more reliable than the purely metaphysical amulets available. Now in their 4th year, and with 2 years of alchemy classes under their belts, they felt ready to start a small business. Ethan agreed to the partnership, simplifying the amulet's design by removing the SMS and Teleport Rune features. He also adjusted the Detect Hostility feature to only target magical creatures and removed the level increase from Protection from Evil. This reduced the complexity and manufacturing difficulty significantly, making the materials much cheaper. Ethan provided the technology and some startup capital, while the twins handled manufacturing, marketing, sales, and customer service. Profits were to be split equally. Additionally, Ethan ordered a large quantity of plain glasses from Muggles and entrusted the twins with their sale. Although the glasses couldn't protect against the basilisk's deadly gaze, they offered a remedy for petrification. Ethan knew not everyone could afford the luxury of a resurrection service. The amulet business quickly became profitable. The Detect Hostility feature might have been limited, but Protection from Evil proved its worth. A Hufflepuff Quidditch player discovered during a match against Slytherin that the opposing team's usual foul play was significantly reduced. The Slytherin players experienced headaches whenever they attempted to hit him with bludgers or commit fouls. This revelation made the amulets extremely popular, not just for their intended protective purpose, but also as a means to prevent foul play in Quidditch and combat school bullying. Despite the success of the amulets, the sales of the plain glasses remained low. Ethan wasn't overly concerned. He didn't possess the miraculous ability to revive anyone with an elixir of rejuvenation, but he still harbored a basic kindness towards the young wizards at Hogwarts. He hoped that the semester would pass without any fatalities due to the butterfly effect. The thought of such possibilities left Ethan feeling uneasy, particularly with Dumbledore's approach to the situation. Chapter 128. With the arrival of the first winter snow, the temperature at Hogwarts dropped rapidly. The entire school was enveloped in a silver blanket, looking exceptionally clean and dazzling. Perhaps due to the cold, the young wizards preferred to stay in the common room, where the huge fireplace, enchanted with a warming spell, made the room as cozy as spring. Before anyone realized it, Christmas was just around the corner. During lunch on Thursday, an additional piece of parchment appeared on the notice board at the entrance of the Great Hall. Duel Club? The name immediately sparked excitement among the young wizards. Is the school going to start a dueling club again? A sixth-year student exclaimed in surprise. The last time I heard about this club was years ago, and it has been closed for almost 10 years now. The students around him buzzed with excitement, discussing the contents of the parchment. The last time the club was held was 10 years ago, right after the defeat of the Death Eaters and the fall of the Dark Lord. It seems the original purpose of the club was to prepare us against the Death Eaters. With their disappearance, the club was disbanded. Restarting it now must hold significant meaning. In the crowd, Ethan analyzed carefully. Are you sure you're not being alarmist? Ethan's roommate, Steve, shivered at the thought. Who's going to run this club? Could it be Professor Flitwick? I heard he was a dueling champion in his youth. Kevin, another one of Ethan's roommates, speculated with hope. However, Ethan quickly doused his hopes. Given the fanfare with which this club has been announced, it's likely to be Lockhart. It can't really be him, can it? Ethan had a strong reputation at Hogwarts for his insights. After hearing his prediction, many young wizards believed him and felt a wave of disappointment. After a series of letdowns, the only ones who still supported Lockhart were his die-hard fans. Nevertheless, despite Lockhart's dwindling popularity, many young wizards remained interested in the dueling club. After all, even if Lockhart wasn't the most competent, they could still enjoy the duels, right? In the corridors of Hogwarts, the inability to duel had left many young wizards feeling frustrated. Ethan, too, was looking forward to the club. Week after week, he had to endure Lockhart's boastful demeanor and requests for autographs. Ethan could hardly contain himself. Perhaps this was his chance to see Lockhart put in his place. So at 8 o'clock in the evening, Ethan arrived at the Great Hall on time. The long dining tables had vanished, replaced by a gilded stage that floated along one wall. Hundreds of candles glowed brightly, and the ceiling turned as dark as velvet once more. The hall was packed with students, each holding their wands, their faces alight with excitement. Most students were unaware of who had founded the club and were eager to see what was in store. Finally, as anticipation reached its peak, the doors to the Great Hall swung open. Lockhart, clad in a flamboyant purple robe that shimmered like charcoal, strode in with confidence. His entrance was as grand as if he were walking down a red carpet, arms outstretched to the young wizards on either side, flashing his white teeth and his signature handsome smile, as though he were being filmed by an invisible camera. The students were on the verge of laughter or applause when they noticed Snape following behind Lockhart. The dour professor, clad in black robes that seemed unwashed for months, moved with an almost floating gait, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Originally, Lockhart had proposed partnering with Professor Flitwick as a mentor for the club, but Snape had taken over the role instead. Ethan and his friends had all agreed on one thing. They wanted to see Lockhart outmatched. Lockhart gestured for silence, then shouted, "Come around! Come around! Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear me? Very good." Well, Professor Dumbledore had not yet arrived, but the dueling club was about to begin, and the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Lockhart seized every opportunity to promote his books. "But we've already bought all his books," Steve whispered. "They're pirated," Kevin added, smiling. Both were Ethan's clients initially. "Next, please allow me to introduce my assistant, Professor Snape," Lockhart announced, his grin wide. "He's informed me that he knows a bit about dueling and has agreed to assist me with a demonstration before class. Don't worry, after our demonstration, I'll return your potions master to you unharmed." Lockhart joked, thinking himself humorous, which only made Professor Snape purse his lips. Ethan almost laughed out loud but restrained himself, knowing Snape wouldn't appreciate it. However, it was uncertain if Snape would return Lockhart in the same condition. The demonstration began with both professors turning their backs to each other, walking a distance apart, then turning around and raising their wands in salute. Lockhart bowed extravagantly, nearly dropping his wand, while Snape simply shook his head in impatience. They took their stances, wands at the ready. 1, 2, 3, Expelliarmus! Snape's spell was cast so swiftly it was almost inaudible, catching Lockhart off guard. Lockhart was sent flying backward several meters, landing with a thud on the platform, staring blankly at the ceiling. Thankfully, the thick carpet cushioned his fall, preventing serious injury. His wand soared into the air before landing among the spectators. Malfoy and other Slytherin students applauded, while many girls jumped up and down, covering their mouths in shock, concerned for their idol. Hermione rolled her eyes. "That's it? If I had known, I wouldn't have bothered coming. This training is nowhere near as effective as your original training," she said to Ethan, who crossed his arms and nodded in agreement. Then Jiangqiu, her cheeks flushed, eagerly asked, "When will you start a training class, Ethan? It could be a public or private class." Her persistence was becoming increasingly noticeable, to the point of annoyance. Hermione intervened. "Ethan is very busy. He spends a lot of time in the library reading, so he has no plans to start any classes." Hermione's glare was unmistakable. The Chinese girl, undeterred, suggested, "It doesn't matter. If you don't have time during the school term, how about during the holidays? Perhaps this Christmas holiday?" Hermione's expression conveyed her disbelief at the audacity of the suggestion. Chapter 129. At that moment, Professor Lockhart found himself in quite a predicament, having fallen to the ground with such force that it seemed he had landed on his waist. It took him several seconds to gather himself, clutching at his waist as he staggered back to his feet, looking utterly embarrassed. His hat had tumbled off, and his usually wavy hair stood on end, a testament to his disheveled state. "Sorry, the floor in the Great Hall is too slippery," Lockhart offered, presenting what was possibly the weakest excuse imaginable. "And the space is rather limited, making it quite inconvenient for performing," he added, compounding his poor justification. As he caught the collective gaze of the audience fixed upon him, he coughed awkwardly and declared with forced confidence, "Well, as everyone has witnessed, that was a disarming spell. As you can see, I've lost my wand. Yes, Professor Snape, what a splendid idea to demonstrate this." He continued, albeit hesitantly. "However, let's not dwell on what I've said. It was clear what you intended to do just now. Had I wished to stop you, it would have been effortless. I believe, for the sake of enhancing their learning, we might as well allow them to witness." His words trailed off as he caught sight of Snape's piercing gaze, and the wand pointed menacingly in his direction, a silent warning that any further nonsense would result in a duel. Lockhart quickly changed the subject. "Now, let's have you experience it firsthand. I will move among you and pair you off into groups of 2. Professor Snape, if you would be so kind as to assist." With that, he hastily vacated the stage. The young wizards exchanged puzzled looks, wondering why they needed to duel and what they were supposed to have learned from Lockhart's demonstration. Nonetheless, the 2 professors began to organize the students into dueling pairs. Lockhart paired Neville with Justin Finch Fletchley, while Snape deliberately separated Harry and Ron, pitting the former against Malfoy. Ethan observed Malfoy's arrogant approach towards Harry, a smug smile on his face, reflecting their deep-seated rivalry, a sight that was almost comically touching. Hermione was matched with Millicent by Snape, who seemed oblivious to the girl's apprehensive expression. The memory of Hermione's impressive 1-against-7 performance on the Quidditch pitch was still fresh in the minds of the Slytherins. Ethan, however, found himself without an opponent until the very end. His reputation for single-handedly defeating a chimera and being recognized by a first-class knighthood made his combat prowess well known. No one dared to challenge him, believing themselves to be no match. To Ethan's surprise, Snape then suggested, "Since everyone acknowledges Mr. Green's strength, Mr. Green, why don't you serve as an assistant for now? The task is simple. If you see anyone attempting to break the rules, give them a warning." Ethan detected a hint of malice beneath Snape's impassive facade, understanding the underlying intention. Nevertheless, he accepted the role of assistant, ready to maintain order among the young wizards. "If you're not here to duel with words, then proceed to cast your spells. This isn't my potions class," Snape remarked impatiently. "All right, face your partner," Lockhart commanded from the stage, regaining some of his composure. "Bow! Raise your wand and get ready. When I count to 3, cast a spell to disarm your opponent. For now, disarming only. We don't want any accidents. 1, 2, 3. As he uttered the final count, chaos ensued. Spells flew in every direction, filling the great hall with a cacophony of sounds and a haze of spell-induced effects. Malfoy found himself incapacitated by Harry's spell, which forced him into an involuntary tap dance, revealing an unexpected talent. Meanwhile, a cloud of green smoke enveloped the area, the result of Neville and Justin's mishap, which left them both sprawled on the ground. Seamus lay among them, continuously expelling slugs due to Ron's malfunctioning war, which also sent Ron flying 3 meters back. Hermione, ever efficient, managed to immobilize Millicent, wrapping her tightly in her robe like a chrysalis and leaving her suspended upside down. Zhang-Chu aimed to impress Ethan with her prowess, but her excitement led to her opponent bleeding profusely. Now she knelt on the ground, pleading for his life. Meanwhile, Siri faced Flint, the Slytherin Quidditch captain, who didn't even manage to draw his wand before being overpowered. Siri treated the duel as if there were no rules. "I said, just disarm! Everyone, stop it!" Lockhart screamed, panic-stricken at the sight of the intense battle. He attempted to intervene among the young wizards, but to no avail. It was Ethan and Snape who effectively resolved the chaos. "The curse will stop," Snape announced, waving his wand gracefully. Harry's impromptu solo ended immediately, and Malfoy's hysterical laughter ceased. Both boys finally looked up as Snape moved among the young wizards, lifting the curses that had affected them. Ethan's approach was more straightforward. With a wave of his wand, an invisible barrier enveloped the nearby young wizards. "Lesser spell negative ward," he declared. Within this enchantment, all spells below level 3 were nullified. Millicent plummeted from the ceiling, and Seamus ceased spitting slugs. Following Ethan's suggestion, he attempted to collect the slugs, which could fetch a handsome price in Diagon Alley. Marietta Edgecombe's enlarging front teeth also receded. However, some cases required hands-on assistance. Ron received a few drops of a revitalizing potion, restoring his composure. Ethan timely administered a healing spell to Zhang-Chu's unfortunate opponent. After considerable effort, the chaos among the young wizards was finally resolved. Snape expressed satisfaction with Ethan's performance, but Ethan felt disillusioned with Hogwarts. The combat skills of Hogwarts' young wizards were subpar, especially considering the Dark Lord's recent resurgence, a fact Dumbledore firmly believed. Yet many students struggled to master essential spells, leading to disappointing performances. Ethan reflected on the future training of Dumbledore's army, as depicted in the original book, where even Junior Harry taught many senior students the disarming curse. This prompted Ethan to question Hogwarts' educational policies and the future of the wizarding world. In his view, a society where every wizard can cast spells was akin to a United States where everyone owns a gun. However, the destructive potential of wands far exceeds that of firearms, and the Ministry of Magic cannot ban wizards from using offensive spells. It's simply unfeasible. Even the commonly used levitation curse could be deadly if applied correctly. In light of this, Ethan believed the best course of action was to promote basic self-defense spells. After all, in a society where everyone is armed, people are less likely to act recklessly. Chapter 130, A Duel of Wits and Magic. "I thought it best to teach you how to counter unfriendly spells," Lockhart announced, regaining the center stage of the auditorium amidst the silence. "Would any volunteers like to come up as a pair to demonstrate? How about Longbottom and Finley?" Before he could finish, Snape interjected, "I believe the students would benefit more from witnessing a real duel. However, I presume Professor Lockhart is not keen on participating." He gave Lockhart a menacing look, prompting the flustered professor to reply, Yes, my wand is a bit overexcited today. In that case, let's have our teaching assistant take over. Mr. Green, if you don't mind." Snape's suggestion was clearly a setup. "Ethan, don't go. Snape is just looking for trouble." Zhang-Chu urgently tugged at Ethan's clothes. "He's jealous because Ravenclaw has been outperforming Slytherin in the House Cup, thanks to you," Steve added, frowning. Many from Ravenclaw glared at Snape, their displeasure evident. Snape's feelings towards Ethan were complex. On one hand, he admired Ethan's prowess in potions, considering him a favored student. On the other, he envied Ethan's popularity and was wary of his magical talent, viewing him as a significant threat, even more so than Dumbledore. Ethan, aware of Snape's conflicted views, remained indifferent. As a wizard of considerable skill, Ethan felt ready to challenge Snape, seeing it as an opportunity to test his abilities. "It's fine. Snape will show restraint," Ethan reassured, though Zhang Chu disagreed silently. Stepping into the arena, Ethan locked eyes with Snape, his gaze fiery with challenge. Snape, interpreting Ethan's confidence as mockery, vowed to teach him a lesson. "Do we need to clear the area, Professor?" Ethan asked, his tone laced with meaning. "No need. I wouldn't want to be too harsh on a young wizard like yourself," Snape replied with a sardonic smile, likening Ethan to Lockhart. With that, both duelists raised their wands, ready to begin. 1, 2, 3, Expelliarmus! Snape launched the first spell, a disarming charm aimed at Ethan. However, Ethan skillfully deflected it, sending the spell towards Crabbe, who was knocked into a wall. Snape, taken aback by Ethan's quick reflexes, launched another spell without thinking. Ethan countered again, this time sending Goyle flying into the Slytherin spectators like a bowling ball, causing chaos. Malfoy, witnessing Ethan's deliberate glance, was convinced the actions were intentional, filling him with dread. Malfoy had already suffered a humiliating defeat at Hermione's hands, and now Ethan's prowess only added to his fears. Ethan's performance in the duel not only showcased his magical skill, but also his strategic mind, turning Snape's challenge into an opportunity to assert his dominance, much to the delight of his Ravenclaw peers and the dismay of the Slytherins. For an entire afternoon, Ethan had been a thorn in Malfoy's side. The final straw came during the last game when he was knocked off his broom by Harry. On Halloween, Ethan had transformed Malfoy into a toad. The most direct reason for Malfoy's current despair was his use of the term mudblood. Now, facing another blatant threat from Ethan, Malfoy was on the verge of collapse. Ethan's disregard for Malfoy's status as the school director and his relentless bullying were too much for Malfoy to bear. "I am apologizing. I shouldn't have discriminated against muggles. I shouldn't have said the word mudblood. Please let me go," Malfoy pleaded. The onlookers' gazes shifted between Ethan and Malfoy, with the more informed ones glancing at Hermione. The girl rewarded Ethan with a bright smile. Snape, observing the scene, seemed to understand everything. He saw a reflection of his younger self in Malfoy, wishing he had been as adept at interacting with girls. Back then, he was too focused on his fragile self-esteem and failed to persevere. He recalled a night when he waited outside the Gryffindor common room until the early hours, hoping to meet Lily. His departure that night allowed James Potter to swoop in and win her over. If only he had possessed Ethan's boldness, he wouldn't be filled with regret today. Snape's thoughts turned bitter as he glared at Harry, whose resemblance to James Potter was a constant reminder of his past grievances. Harry, confused by Snape's hostility, simply kept to himself. "Everyone, take 10 steps back and stay away from the stage," Snape commanded, channeling his grief and anger into a fierce determination. He launched a series of spells at Ethan, who, like a master swordsman, deflected every attack with ease. Ethan's proficiency in swordsmanship, honed under Cyrilla's tutelage, allowed him to expertly utilize the Iron Armor Curse and adapt to every challenging attack. Ethan was even exploring ways to enhance his Arcane Sword 2.0 with a permanent Iron Armor Curse. The duel was intense and fast-paced, leaving the young wizards in awe. Both combatants employed silent casting, with their spells flying at an astonishing speed. The duel was a testament to their concentration and fundamental skills, where a single mistake could determine the outcome. However, as Snape intensified his assault, Ethan remained unshaken. The last time Snape had experienced such a battle was during the Voldemort era, against wizards of considerable experience. Yet here was Ethan, a second-year student, matching him blow for blow. Snape underestimated Ethan's innate talent and adaptability, not just in learning magic, but in combat as well. As Snape attempted to overpower Ethan with a relentless barrage, Ethan was biding his time. When Snape launched a disarming spell, Ethan found his opening and countered. Counterspell! Snape's magic was disrupted, his prepared spell vanishing unexpectedly. Panicked by this unforeseen turn of events, Snape was caught off guard. Ethan seized the moment. Lightning bolt! A bolt of electricity shot from his wand, striking Snape squarely in the chest. directly causing him to twitch uncontrollably and almost unable to hold the wand. Ethan's endurance was remarkable. He managed to endure the pain and dodge to the side. Following up with a continuous attack, he sharply waved his wand and declared, "All curses end." Only then did the surging magical power completely resist the lightning beam. However, Ethan's assault was far from over. He waved his wand and pointed it above Snape. The little wizards surrounding Snape suddenly felt a chill. The sky above Snape quickly became overcast, followed by a dense mist. Ice picks rained down from the sky, targeting Snape's head and face. The sharpness of the ice picks suggested that even a single hit could cause severe head injuries. This was the 4th-level evocation spell, Ice Storm. Snape, facing a spell he had never seen before, responded with calmness. By now, he had come to regard Ethan as an opponent of equal standing. With a wave of his wand above his head, the tip of his wand emitted raging black flames, melting and vaporizing all approaching ice picks. The high temperature countered the severe cold, melting even the unaffected ice picks into water. As Snape continued his efforts, even the ice clouds sustaining the ice storm overhead dissipated. It was clear to the young wizards that Ethan was at a disadvantage in this magical confrontation. After dealing with the ice storm, Snape turned his wand towards Ethan, seemingly ready to retaliate. Unexpectedly, a triumphant smile appeared on Ethan's face. The next moment, Snape felt something binding his feet. Looking down, he saw clumps of vines sprouting from the water where the ice picks had melted, growing at an extraordinary speed and sweeping towards him. Damn, there's something wrong with those ice picks, Snape realized. Although it seemed he had the upper hand, he had been outmaneuvered. He couldn't fathom how Ethan made the vines grow so rapidly. Vines don't appear out of nowhere, and transfiguration spells couldn't achieve this effect. There must have been vine seeds wrapped in those ice picks. Snape acknowledged he had underestimated his opponent. In fact, during the battle against the ice storm, Snape had resorted to using his own dark magic. Although the magical flame he conjured wasn't a powerful fire spell, it was beyond the scope of conventional magic. But how had Ethan mastered such powerful magic? Snape was puzzled. A person's growth is usually gradual, requiring time to accumulate knowledge and skill. Yet, Ethan, only in his 2nd year, seemed to defy this logic, evolving from a learner to a creator of magic in just 2 years. This was astonishing. The battle continued, and Snape once again summoned the magical flame, attempting to burn off the aggressive vines in a final effort. Suddenly, a silver mist flickered around Snape. It was the light of Mizangbu. Then, Snape found himself immobilized, feeling a hard stick pressing against his back. Upon closer inspection, Ethan, who was supposed to be standing opposite him, had somehow appeared beside him, holding a wand pointed at his waist. The outcome had been decided. Chapter 131. Seeing Ethan's wand pointed at him from such a close distance, Snape realized he had no chance to retaliate and ceased his spellcasting. Observing this, Ethan waved his wand, and the vines that had been growing uncontrollably stopped in their tracks and quickly withered away. As the dead vines fell at his feet, Snape's gaze held a mix of emotions. "You hid the seeds in those hailstones, didn't you?" he inquired. "Care to guess?" Ethan replied with a smile. Snape snorted before asking again, "What was the name of the spell you used to make the vines grow?" "Do you want to learn it? I can teach you, but you won't be able to master the druid spell," Ethan teased. Snape, unwilling to humble himself to learn the technique, walked away in frustration. In truth, Snape was at a natural disadvantage in this duel. On one hand, Ethan's proficiency and his arsenal of diverse tactics played a crucial role. For instance, the vine ambush was ingeniously executed, using Ice Storm to conceal the vine seeds, directing them to Snape's feet, coupled with psychic suggestion to make Snape overlook the subtle changes on the ground, and the use of spells like Plant Growth and Command Plant. This combination of tactics naturally led to Snape's defeat. Moreover, Snape's inability to use dark magic restricted his combat capabilities. Had they both fought without holding back, Ethan might have managed a draw. Witnessing Ethan defeat their head of house, the Slytherin students were visibly shaken, while students from other houses regarded Ethan with a newfound respect. Ethan's previous feat of defeating a chimera beast was only known through rumors, but his public display of strength now clearly surpassed that of an adult wizard. Being only in his second year, Ethan was on track to becoming a legendary wizard like Dumbledore. "Bravo, Mr. Green. Congratulations on winning this duel," Lockhart exclaimed as he approached Ethan, draping an arm around his shoulders with feigned camaraderie, giving onlookers the impression of a close mentor-student relationship. Unbeknownst to them, Lockhart planned to embellish this event in his next book, portraying himself as Ethan's favorite teacher, claiming to have provided private tutoring to Ethan for 2 hours every night. This way, Lockhart hoped to boost his own fame alongside Ethan's rising star. As Ethan managed to keep his composure, Lockhart quickly shifted focus to organizing another duel, this time between Harry and Malfoy. Snape, still seething from his defeat, whispered something to Malfoy, seemingly trying to channel his frustration into the student. Malfoy's expression shifted from panic to smugness. Lockhart attempted to offer Harry advice, but his flamboyant wand-waving technique was something Harry vowed never to emulate. The duel between the students wasn't expected to surpass Ethan and Snape's showdown, yet it had its moments of excitement. Malfoy cast a spell unfamiliar to the onlookers. Oolong emerges from the hole. The tip of his wand burst open, and a long black snake leaped out, landing heavily on the floor between them, poised to strike. The crowd screamed and hastily retreated, creating a clearing around the summoned snake, which clearly bore the mark of dark magic, reminiscent of Snape's influence. "Don't move, Potter. I'll handle this," Snape declared lazily, with a hint of showmanship, yet he made no move, seemingly content to let Harry face the situation alone. "Let me handle it. I know a spell." Lockhart interjected, eager to demonstrate his prowess. Ethan shouted, raising his wand and waving it threateningly at the snake. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and instead of disappearing, the snake leaped more than 10 feet into the air. When it landed, it had grown several times in size, transforming into a menacing black python. Enraged by the throw, it hissed a message and slithered straight towards the nearest target, Justin Finch Fletchley. Raising its head, it bared its fangs, ready to strike. Subconsciously, Harry stepped forward and hissed at the snake, which immediately lost its aggressiveness and collapsed on the floor, as limp as a thick, black watering hose. Harry knew the snake would not attack anyone again. However, when he looked up at Justin, he was met with an expression filled with anger and horror, not the gratitude he expected. "What kind of trick do you think you are playing?" Justin shouted loudly. Before Harry could explain, Justin turned and rushed out of the auditorium, as if running for his life. Professor Snape stepped forward, waved his wand, and the snake vanished in a wisp of black smoke. He then gave Harry a look that was both cunning and calculating. The other students also became wary of Harry. Ethan understood what Harry had said through animal talk. Harry had simply said, "Let him go." But how could he explain this to Harry? Would he also be seen as a Parselmouth? Only Ron stepped forward first, pulling Harry away. As they left, people parted to make way for them, as if afraid of getting into trouble. The Duel Club's first event ended abruptly. Draco Malfoy followed, shouting angrily, "Don't think just because you're a Parseltongue, you're the heir of Slytherin. Our heir to Slytherin could never be a crude and reckless Gryffindor." His anger was tinged with jealousy and a perverse pleasure, as if he wanted to vent all his recent frustrations. "I would rather be a squib than the heir of Slytherin," Harry retorted, then added in confusion, "What do you think I am?" "Stop pretending," Malfoy snapped, growing even angrier at Harry's question. He seemed about to say more, but turned and left when he saw Ethan and Hermione walking together. "He said you were a Parseltongue, Harry. You can talk to snakes," Ron explained thoughtfully. "Harry, being able to talk to snakes was Salazar Slytherin's famous ability. That's why the symbol of Slytherin House is a snake," Hermione added in a low voice. "But I'm really not a descendant of Slytherin," Harry said in a panic. "I'm not. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense." He was frightened, unable to explain his ability to speak Parseltongue, and unwilling to accept the possibility that he might be the heir of Slytherin. Out of concern for his friend, Ethan comforted him. "Don't worry, Harry. Not all Parseltongues are heirs of Slytherin. In fact, Parseltongues have been around since ancient Greece. For example, the despicable Herpo was a Parseltongue." However, his attempt at reassurance only made Harry more anxious. So, Parseltongue is a language that only dark wizards can speak? But I'm not a dark wizard either. Ethan didn't know what else to say, so he tried to offer a different perspective. But it's nice to learn a new skill, isn't it? Maybe you could think of it as a foreign language. Dumbledore also spoke the language of merfolk. Despite his efforts, it was clear that this reasoning did little to comfort Harry. Ethan realized he might not be the best at offering consolation. He feared that if he continued in this manner, Harry would only feel worse. Ethan made his way up to the astronomical observatory, contemplating the drastic measure of jumping off the building. In his current state, he realized he could only allow himself to wallow in his emotions for a few more days. Fortunately, in this era, there was no equivalent to Nettie's cloud to amplify his melancholy. Update 5.4.4. Launching a new book is no small feat, so I kindly ask for your support. Please consider subscribing, sending flowers, casting monthly votes, writing reviews, and offering rewards to the author. Your support means the world to me. Chapter 132. The next morning, snowflakes began to drift through the castle windows, blanketing the ground in a soft, white layer. This unexpected weather led to the cancellation of the last herbal medicine class of the semester. Professor Sprout, concerned about the well-being of the mandrake, decided to tend to it herself, emphasizing its importance in saving Mrs. Norris and Colin Creevey. By the following day, news that Harry was a Parseltongue had spread throughout the student body. During breakfast, Harry and Ron found themselves almost isolated at the long table, with only Hermione and the Weasley twins brave enough to join them. Ethan reflected on the fluctuating attitudes towards Harry, recalling the cheers and support Harry received during various moments of triumph, contrasted with the current situation. He noted the hypocrisy in the changing attitudes, finding it disheartening. Despite the tension, the support from Ethan, Hermione, and others provided Harry with some comfort, though the twins' attempt at humor, clearing a path for Harry as the heir of Slytherin, was premature. The atmosphere was not much better in Ravenclaw. Upon returning to the Ravenclaw common room, Ethan noticed a list of missing items posted by Luna Lovegood. Intrigued by Luna, who was known for her unique appearance and demeanor, Ethan approached her to inquire about the list. Luna explained that her belongings were often hidden by others as a form of jest, expressing her hope to retrieve them before the holiday. Ethan was appalled, recognizing the behavior as bullying rather than harmless fun. Determined to help, Ethan sought out Siri, a popular figure in Ravenclaw and close friend of the female prefect, Penelo. Siri revealed that Luna was frequently targeted for her eccentricities, earning her the nickname Crazy Girl among her peers. Despite this, Luna maintained a passive attitude, which only encouraged further ridicule. This situation had led Luna to form a closer bond with Ginny from Gryffindor rather than her own housemates. Ethan saw this as a clear violation of school principles and decided to take action. He gathered the first and second-year girls in the common room, addressing them with a stern message. He expressed his disappointment, pointing out that such discrimination and bullying were behaviors he had expected from Slytherin, not Ravenclaw. He criticized the house for failing to live up to its reputation for wisdom and knowledge, arguing that true intelligence includes the ability to accept and support one another. Ethan's speech emphasized the importance of unity and understanding, challenging the students to reflect on their actions and to strive for a more inclusive and supportive community within Ravenclaw. No one can solve all problems alone. Everyone needs the strength of others. At this moment, Ethan demonstrated the authority he had built over the past 2 years, delivering a profound ideological lesson to the young witches. Without naming anyone specifically, his message was clear to all, and it moved several first-year girls to tears. After they departed, Ethan offered comfort to Luna. Not every little wizard in Ravenclaw can grasp true wisdom. Consider Professor Quirrell or Lockhart. How is it they were chosen consecutively? The sacrifices always came from Ravenclaw. Couldn't Dumbledore have used a sheep instead? So don't worry too much about this, and don't force yourself to fit in just for the sake of it. You are unique, and that's what matters, right? Luna nodded, seemingly understanding, and thanked Ethan. Many of her lost items were returned by her mischievous classmates, some of whom even apologized. While this might not immediately win her friends in Ravenclaw, her situation had significantly improved. After resolving these issues, Ethan finally found some time for his own projects. He was seated by the fire in the common room, engrossed in designing a new alchemy plan for Arcane Sword 2.0, inspired by his experiences in the dueling club. He aimed to master the impressive feat of sing through magic with a sword. Cyrilla sat beside him, diligently working through her hefty homework load. She preferred studying in the common room to the library lately, especially since Hermione couldn't enter. This way, she could cherish the moments alone with Ethan. However, studying in the common room presented its own set of challenges. Suddenly, the tranquility of the Ravenclaw common room was disrupted as Zhang Chu and Marietta rushed in, their faces etched with deep fear. Upon spotting Ethan, Zhang Chu hurried over, eager to share the latest gossip. Cyrilla, witnessing this, nearly snapped her pen in frustration. Trouble was brewing. Something big happened, Ethan. Someone was attacked again, and this time, 2 victims were petrified at once, Zhang Chu exclaimed. The victims are Justin and nearly headless Nick. They were both petrified, and your friend Harry Potter is being blamed. Peeves caught him at the scene. Poor Potter, Ethan thought, amused by the notion of being referred to merely as Ethan's friend by his admirers. Outwardly, he defended Harry. It's unlikely that Harry Potter is the culprit. His abilities aren't nearly sufficient to petrify a ghost. Nevertheless, he packed away his materials and stood up, intrigued. I've yet to see a petrified ghost. This is indeed a novelty. Let's go see what's happened. Where is Nick now? Near the 3rd-floor corridor. Zhang Chu volunteered to lead the way. Despite her own fears of being attacked, she felt a sense of safety with Ethan by her side. Chapter 133. When Ethan saw Nick with his own eyes, he was slightly frightened. The ghost was no longer the milky white and transparent figure he was used to. Instead, Nick had become black and smoky, lying motionless in the air, suspended 6 inches above the ground. Half of his head was missing, and his expression was one of horror. It was a peculiar sight, seeing a ghost float even after being petrified. Ethan couldn't resist stepping forward for a closer examination. However, he found nothing unusual. The essence of the ghost remained unchanged, albeit intertwined with a strong curse, similar to a petrified person. Later, they visited Justin again. The boy's face was twisted in terror, clearly having witnessed the appearance of the assailant. While Harry's presence wouldn't normally elicit such a reaction, the young wizards couldn't understand this. It seemed Harry would face a challenging time ahead. Notably, despite being petrified, Justin still clutched the amulet tightly in his hand. The Weasley brothers speculated that Justin had sensed something through the amulet before the attack, which explained his actions. Being petrified was merely unfortunate timing. Consequently, Ethan's amulet sold out once again before Christmas. The Christmas holiday arrived soon after, and Ethan, along with others, boarded the Hogwarts Express to head home. This holiday, the monster in the Chamber of Secrets had prompted an unusually large number of students to return home. However, for Ethan, the train ride was merely a facade. Upon reaching King's Cross Station, he used teleportation to take Siri back to Otter St. Catchpole and reopen the demiplane. This led to the neighbors noticing the woods and tower, missing for months, had reappeared. On Christmas Day, the village of Otter St. Catchpole was blanketed in heavy snow. Siri, usually an early riser, slept until noon for a change. Opening the door, she was greeted by a courtyard draped in silver, with only the greenhouse, where magical plants were cultivated, radiating the warmth of spring. Before opening the demiplane, Ethan had hastily used the sand-to-glass spell to transform a pile of sand into glass for the greenhouse. He then tirelessly enchanted it with spells like daylight, water creation, desiccation, and control temperature, ice. These spells allowed even a muggle to control the environment within the greenhouse as easily as using a remote to operate an air conditioner, ensuring the magical plants received optimal growing conditions. The stark contrast between the silvery white outdoors and the lush green inside was a sight to behold. Siri stretched at the door, then performed a series of sword exercises marking the completion of her morning routine. Meanwhile, the owl Hermo, exhausted from a night's work, was being chased by Circe, the mischievous female bird. During Ethan's absence, they had been tasked with pest control in the greenhouse. On a whim, scooped up a snowball from the ground and lobbed it at Hermo's head. Startled by the unexpected snowball to the face, Hermo flapped his wings in protest and flew to the kitchen to complain to Ethan. Like Siri, Ethan had just woken up. The two had stayed up late the previous night, watching Home Alone 2 in the living room. Amused by the film, Siri had persuaded Ethan to revisit the first movie, leading to their late night. Their holiday schedule had become quite disorganized. Beyond watching movies, they indulged in playing video games, watching TV, studying magic, and engaging in the occasional spirited sword duel. In short, they did whatever they pleased, especially since Hermione was not around to remind them of their responsibilities. Ethan had gradually come to understand the true essence of interacting with the opposite sex. While it was enchanting to maintain various relationships through charm, he realized that when competitors were present, girls tended to be more reserved. It was only through spending time alone that one could truly make progress. When Helmer complained to Ethan about being bullied by Cyrilla, Ethan was focused on the stove in front of him. Helmer's limited ability to communicate didn't allow it to form complete sentences, but Ethan could still make out keywords like snow, hit me, and women. As he listened to the eagle owl's grievances, Ethan waved his wand, commanding, "Pots and pans, surrender to me." With a shout of "Jong-er," the kitchen knife swiftly chopped the vegetable leaves, mushrooms, onions, ginger, and garlic into a puree, while another knife took care of the pork. Ethan then mixed the flour and water on the chopping board, lightly pointing his wand to infuse a small amount of acceleration spell into it. In no time, the dough visibly expanded. The meat and vegetables were now ready. Ethan lifted his wand and waved it clockwise, causing the vegetable leaves, mushrooms, onions, ginger, garlic, pork, salt, soy sauce, sugar, and other ingredients to float in the air, swirling into a large vortex before naturally mixing together. The filling was thus prepared. Ethan then took a bit of dough and, with a clear enunciation of the spell torn apart, divided the fillings and dough into dozens of even pieces as if they were separated by invisible nets. The dough landed on the table, spreading out into pancakes with the fillings perfectly centered on each. Ethan's wand then pointed at the dough pancakes, which automatically wrapped the fillings and transformed into steamed buns. The buns, as if endowed with legs, obediently lined up on the plate, with the last dozen leaping into the eagerly awaiting steamer. Ethan closed the lid, and blue flames sprang to life beneath the pot. All that remained was to wait. The magical cooking process was so seamless that Ethan felt as though he was starring in a Chinese culinary film. Unfortunately, the food itself couldn't sparkle with magic. At that moment, Cyrilla tiptoed over, making a silent gesture to Helmer on the windowsill. Moving with the stealth of a witcher, akin to a civet cat, she crept up behind Ethan and suddenly reached out, pulling open his collar to stuff a snowball inside. Ethan's psychic abilities had alerted him to Cyrilla's approach, but he had initially disregarded it. Caught off guard by the sudden attack, he quickly retrieved the snowball from his neck, retaliating with a playful grin. "Hug! Sorry!" Ethan blurted out, immediately realizing his mistake and apologizing swiftly. "Did you do this on purpose or by accident?" Cyrilla exclaimed, clutching her chest as she stepped back. Reflecting on the smoothness of his cooking, Ethan glanced at his right hand, noting, "Well, it feels good and has great potential." The focus of his thoughts was Cyrilla. Chapter 134. Ethan continued to focus on the stove, his movements accelerated by the acceleration technique. The buns were steamed quickly, eagerly jumping onto the plates as if they couldn't wait to be devoured. During breakfast, Cyrilla settled at the dining table as if the earlier events had never occurred. She consumed 4 large buns with soy milk, lavishing praise on the delicacies from Ethan's hometown. After the meal, they joyfully opened their Christmas gifts. As Ravenclaw's Quidditch savior for 3 consecutive years before Ethan, Cyrilla had amassed quite a few friends in Ravenclaw. The team members had sent them gifts, mostly Quidditch-related, Deaky magazines, posters, and broom care accessories. Her best friend, Prefect Penelope Clivat, gifted her a pair of practical sports gloves. However, the highlight was the gifts Ethan received. Known as the uncrowned king of Ravenclaw, Ethan had many admirers, resulting in a plethora of gifts that could fill a small room. He ignored all the chocolates, partly due to disinterest and partly from fear they might contain a love potion. Harry and Ron stuck to their usual offerings of snacks, while the Weasley twins were more thoughtful, gifting a copy of Toadstool Tales and their recent financial statements. The Tonks' gifts included men's cologne and hair conditioner, seemingly unaware that Ethan, hailing from the Dragon Country, had no use for the former. Tonks himself presented Ethan with a looking glass that alerted the user to suspicious individuals nearby by shining and rotating. Gianna sent a box of handmade gingerbread cookies and a sweater that sang Tinker Bell when worn, a special nod to the Wintervale Festival in World of Warcraft, hinting at her homesickness. Hermione's gift was a greeting card, promising a real gift upon their next meeting. Cyrilla, noticing the sharpness in Ethan's eyes, also opted for a greeting card for her next gift, promising to bring it along on her visit. Her expression darkened at the thought of another similar card, which would have surely spoiled her day. This year, even the professors joined in the gift-giving, mostly offering expansion books on their respective subjects. Snape's gift was the most unique, a bezoar. Despite its detoxifying properties, Ethan couldn't help but feel it was an ominous gift. Ethan's gifts, given the night before, had exhausted Hemmer. They were handmade wallets enhanced with space expansion spells, a precious gift due to the complexity of the spell. The size of the expanded space varied based on the recipient's closeness to Ethan, with Hermione's wallet boasting a full cubic meter of space. Jaina's gift included a greeting card wishing her a happy winter veil, a gesture of comfort. Cyrilla's gift was a silver sword. "This is Arcane Sword 2.0, Ethan introduced proudly. "The Iron Armor curse has been successfully attached to the blade. Now, you can try using the sword to cut through spells." After presenting the gift, Ethan looked at Cyrilla expectantly. "So, what is my gift?" he asked. "Your gift." Cyrilla stood before Ethan, hands behind her back, as if concealing something. Just as Ethan's anticipation reached its peak, Cyrilla leaned forward and pressed her slightly cold lips directly. Ethan was initially surprised, but then willingly enjoyed the moment. After 3 full minutes, the two separated. "So, this is your Christmas gift?" Ethan asked slowly after a while. "How about, are you disappointed and dissatisfied?" Seeley shrugged and responded coolly. "Of course not satisfied. I'm only 12 years old. This should be considered a gift from me, right?" Ethan retorted, visibly annoyed. "So what?" Sheely raised her eyebrows provocatively. "This is the only gift I have. Do you want it or not?" "Of course, I want it." Ethan licked his lips. "But one is not enough. I have to collect a few more times." Just as Ethan was about to continue accepting gifts, there was a knock on the door. Opening it, he discovered Luna, wrapped in a thick coat, having walked through the snow to visit. Ethan could sense Sheely behind him, slipping back into her gloomy mood. You've been busy for so long, but now it must all feel worth it," Shirella remarked irritably, letting Luna in. Luna was always straightforward and rarely said odd things, leaving Ethan with little choice but to welcome her. Upon entering, Luna handed over a large package. "This is a Christmas gift for you, a cake I made." The female Witcher felt a sudden embarrassment, realizing she was also part of this gift exchange. Ethan seized the opportunity to tease her. "I just came here to say thank you. You were also busy at that time. Why are you thinking about it now?" "Because I have seen through your essence." Sheely glanced at Ethan, but treated the schoolgirl honestly and warmly. It's worth noting that Luna's cooking skills were excellent. The cake was not only delicious, but also beautifully presented. Perhaps because she was raised solely by her father, she seemed adept at all skills that allowed her to entertain herself and take care of others. For instance, she played well with Circe, the Levin family's evil witch-bird, but she didn't stay long at Ethan's home, soon leaving to distribute Christmas gifts to other neighbors. If Luna's visit was a mere disturbance for Cyrilla, the guests who arrived in the following days posed a real threat. On the second day of Christmas, Zhang Chu visited, bringing many Dragon Kingdom specialties that were rare for ordinary people. They even organized a Dragon Kingdom-style party together, which greatly alleviated Ethan's homesickness. However, what troubled Siri the most was the last visitor, Hermione Granger. Hermione's arrival signified the end of their carefree world, transitioning them back to a life of three. Yet, even this life of three was warmer compared to the loneliness of the past years and the wandering before time travel. Cirilla felt a growing fondness for this new life. If not for her lingering thoughts on the fate of her adoptive parents, she might have confessed, "I am happy here and don't miss Shu." Chapter 135. Time flew by, and the trio returned to school the day before classes resumed. The shadow cast by the Chamber of Secrets and its assailants had been significantly diminished as the entire holiday period passed without incident at Hogwarts. Many believed that the ordeal was nearly over, anticipating that in a few months, following the mandrake harvest, those who had been petrified would be restored to their normal states, and the identity of the assailant would likely be uncovered. Even Ethan found himself slightly lowering his guard. Little did he know, trouble would arise again just a week after their return to school. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Ethan was engrossed in a book titled The Hybridization and Breeding of Magical Creatures in his usual corner of the library. Typically, Miss Granger would be by his side, ready to consult him on any question that arose, but today she was conspicuously absent. Perhaps she had other commitments? It was then that Ethan's concentration was broken by the sound of Mrs. Pince's shouting and the approach of heavy footsteps. The advancing figure was none other than Vincent Crabbe, one of Malfoy's cronies, charging towards him like a wild boar. Ethan was puzzled. Had Malfoy really resorted to sending his lackeys after him? Crabbe halted in front of Ethan and said in an unexpectedly calm voice, "Ethan, come to the bathroom on the 3rd floor. Something's happened to Hermione." "Third floor? Bathroom? Hermione?" Ethan repeated, confusion evident in his voice. And why was Crabbe the bearer of this news? Ethan couldn't help but suspect that this was Malfoy's way of seeking revenge after Hermione had bested him. Yet neither Malfoy's cunning nor Crabbe's integrity seemed sufficient to orchestrate such a sinister plot. "Wait, you're not Crabbe. You're Harry," Ethan realized, recalling a similar scenario from the original story. Surprised, Harry asked, "How did you recognize me? Is there something wrong with the polyjuice potion?" Indeed, it was Harry, which explained the situation with Hermione. However, Ethan was still puzzled. Hermione hadn't brewed polyjuice potion as she had in the original tale. The potion was notoriously difficult to concoct, requiring a complex process and a brewing time of a month. Nonetheless, this was not the moment for such discussions. Ethan quickly followed Harry, who had taken on Crabbe's appearance, out of the library. "Don't worry, Harry. I recognized you by your tone and manner of speaking. Most people wouldn't notice anything amiss," Ethan reassured him. Outside the library, they encountered Goyle, likely Ron in disguise. "We have limited time due to the polyjuice potion. Let's go find Malfoy," Harry suggested, before hurrying off with Ron. Ethan made his way to the abandoned bathroom on the 3rd floor. From a distance, he could hear Moaning Myrtle's gleeful singing. As he approached, he heard her knocking on a stall door, taunting, "Granger, come out quickly." "I don't want to." Hermione's voice was filled with panic. "If you don't come out, I'll call everyone to see," Myrtle threatened. "I've been here for 50 years, and finally, someone uglier than me." "No, please." Hermione's pleas grew more desperate. Just then, Ethan entered the bathroom. Myrtle, spotting him, shouted excitedly, "Come here, take a look! It's terrifying! A cat person! I've never seen anyone so ugly." Clearly, she relished the thought of everyone witnessing Hermione's current state. "Shut up, Myrtle. Go away," Ethan commanded, employing a level 2 necromancy spell, Command. When the necromancer book was opened, the ghost Myrtle obediently closed her mouth and vanished from Ethan's sight. In the bathroom, Ethan immediately noticed the only closed compartment where Hermione was hiding. Approaching, he pushed the door, but it remained shut. "Hermione, open the door. It's me," he called out, yet only her quiet sobs answered from within. "Open the door. Don't worry, I can save you," he reassured her. Hermione finally spoke, her voice intermittent. "No? No need. The polyjuice potion only lasts for an hour, and after a while, you can change back." "Do you think that's possible?" Ethan couldn't help but be realistic. Polyjuice potion isn't meant for transforming into animals, so you won't change back after an hour. This revelation only made the sobbing in the toilet louder, but Hermione stubbornly refused to open the door. Left with no other choice, Ethan resorted to a more coercive approach. Myrtle went to call someone else. Hiding is futile. Miss Granger, you wouldn't want others to see you like this, would you? This statement had the desired effect. With a click, the door lock yielded. Ethan pushed open the compartment door to find Hermione huddled in a corner, her head covered by her robe as she tried desperately to conceal herself. Ethan attempted to lift the robe, but Hermione clutched it tightly, refusing to let go. In this vulnerable state, the last person she wanted to see was Ethan. Don't, Ethan, she cried out, her lips trembling. Come on, it's okay. Let me help you, Ethan urged gently. Hermione, lacking Ethan's strength, eventually had to relent. When Ethan saw her true appearance, he was taken aback. Hermione had undergone a complete transformation, with elongated growths on her face and hands, covered in orange fur, her eyes turned yellow, two pointed triangular ears protruding from her hair, and a slender cat tail peeking out from under her robe. To Ethan, this was a first. Although Hermione had cat-like features all over her body, she didn't possess a cat's head like a true half-orc, but rather a blend of human skull structure and feline facial features. It was an unsettling sight, and it took him a moment to suppress the urge to reach out to her. Hermione, still in tears, explained, "Millicent must have owned a cat. What I took wasn't her hair, but the cat's." However, when she caught Ethan's somewhat fascinated gaze, she was at a loss for words. She had feared Ethan's revulsion, but instead she found his reaction perplexing. Why did he seem so captivated? You, I hate you. Don't look at me like that. Hermione, in a mix of embarrassment and frustration, threw her robe at Ethan's face. Yet she hesitated, unable to follow through with her impulse to push him away. Instead, she averted her gaze, refusing to meet his eyes. Ethan, mistaking her action for sadness, gently embraced her, offering comfort. "Don't worry, Hermione. Even in this state, I will still like you." Such words, especially under these circumstances, would touch anyone's heart. Despite her transformation, Ethan's unwavering support brought Hermione a sense of relief, yet it also left her feeling bewildered. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her sadness subsiding slightly as she shifted uncomfortably. "But could you let go of me a bit, you pervert?" Ethan was taken aback, wondering how his intentions had been so misinterpreted. The transformed Hermione turned to him, her voice low with a mix of complaint and confusion. "Really, why didn't I realize before that you had such unusual interests?" Ethan reached out, trying to reassure her, but also reflecting on how his actions might have been perceived. The complexity of their emotions in this unusual situation underscored the depth of their friendship and the challenges they faced together. Ethan wiped away the tears on the girl's cheek, his voice tinged with amusement. "It's strange, isn't it? One of us is a cat girl, and the other is someone who likes cat girls. Doesn't that make us a perfect match?" "Nonsense," Hermione retorted, but she couldn't help chuckling at his words. The sadness that had enveloped her at the thought of becoming a cat girl seemed to dissipate. Ethan laughed along with her, then stood up and gently lifted Hermione as if she were indeed a real cat. Hermione, embracing her new form, twitched her cat ears and rested her head against Ethan's chest. Her slender tail gently wrapped around his arm, the soft cat fur tickling his skin. Unable to resist, Ethan finally gave in to the peculiar urge and took a deep breath of Hermione's cat hair, a move that nearly earned him a scratch from her cat claws. Chapter 136. "So how do we get to the school doctor's office?" Hermione asked, trying to ignore Ethan's fascination with the cat's paw pads in the bathroom. "The school doctor's office? Why would we go there?" Ethan replied, puzzled. "To change back to my original form. I can't stay like this forever, can I?" Hermione exclaimed, clearly frustrated. Ethan seemed genuinely confused. "What's wrong with staying like this?" Hermione was taken aback by his response. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was he actually enjoying this situation? She stole a glance at Ethan, who was once again poking at the soft pads of her palms, thoroughly entertained. "But I have to meet other people," Hermione protested. "I don't want to keep looking like this." Ethan's tone dropped slightly, a hint of disappointment in his voice. "All right, but you don't need to go to the school hospital for that." "Why not?" "Because I can transform you back myself." Ethan said with confidence. Hermione paused, considering his capabilities. You're right. I had forgotten about your groundbreaking work with the animagus transformation and your proficiency in other transformations. If you're handling the transformation, indeed, the art of transformation is vast, encompassing animagus transformations, cross-species transformations, human transformations, and more. Among these, human transformation involves altering the human body, a technique known as the manual shift disguise. The infamous Dark Lord Grindelwald once used this method to impersonate Percival Graves, infiltrating the Magical Congress of the United States without relying on Polyjuice Potion or being a disguise magus. This level of transformation requires significant skill, but Ethan, with his expertise in transformation magic, has his methods. Arcane magic offers various levels of transformation spells, from temporary human transformations to permanent alterations of form. Considering Hermione's current state, reverting to her original form would be akin to transforming a cat person back into a human. Although Ethan hasn't mastered the most advanced transformation spells, the difference between humans and cat people is minimal compared to other transformations. Thus, with a hint of reluctance, Ethan pointed his wand at Hermione and cast a 6th-level transfiguration spell, the most powerful transformation spell he could perform. Hermione's fur began to recede, her paws transformed back into human hands, and her facial features returned to their human form. "Great! You did it!" she exclaimed, feeling her smooth face and looking at her hands. Her tail, however, brushed against Ethan's arm, prompting a sudden realization. She spun around, only to discover that her tail was still there, along with the fluffy ears atop her head. "Ethan, try again. Your spell didn't fully work," Hermione pleaded, her voice taking on a coaxing tone. Ethan, however, shook his head. "No, I've already used my transformation spell to its fullest extent." After hearing this, panicked, Hermione exclaimed, "But I still have my ears and tail." "I know, I did this on purpose," Ethan said, proudly puffing up his chest and explaining. "Although I have removed most of the catgirl elements from you, I retained some of the cat characteristics. This way, you'll remember that you've done something wrong. In short, this state will last for at least a month before I change you back." "You're not here to teach me a lesson. You're here to enjoy yourself. Pervert, Ethan," Hermione complained softly. However, looking at Ethan's righteous expression, she conceded, "Okay, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have rashly drunk a potion I didn't understand. However, I did this all to solve the problem of the Chamber of Secrets. I also wanted to sneak into Slytherin and trick Malfoy." As she said that, Hermione stuck out her tongue shyly, looking exactly like a real catgirl. Seeing Hermione acting coquettishly, Ethan sighed. "Next time, at least tell me in advance." Then he asked casually, "Speaking of way, Hitch, you didn't make the Polyjuice Potion, right? Then where did you get it?" "Ron provided it," Hermione said, mentioning a name Ethan had never expected. "Ron? Ethan was stunned. That Ron Weasley could actually brew Polyjuice Potion? "Of course, with my help. At least the last part of the work was done by me," Hermione added. "Harry was responsible for stealing the ingredients, and the initial brewing of the decoction was mainly done by Ron." As she said that, she also revealed something Ethan had never paid attention to. "You don't know, Ron's performance in class has been great during this period. He has never asked me to copy homework again. Last time in the Transfiguration class, I even received praise from Professor McGonagall." Really, Ethan still found it incredible. Ron in the original story was not so accomplished. On the contrary, due to his broken wand, Ron had been struggling throughout the school year. Even if Ron in this world made extra money using Scribe during the summer and had enough money to buy himself a new wand, his progress should not have been so remarkable, especially in making Polyjuice Potion. Ethan would rather believe it was Neville who made the potion. The butterfly effect he brought had not had such a significant impact on Ron. Ethan felt he detected a hint of conspiracy. However, in the eyes of Hermione and Harry, Ron was not a poor student in the first place, and it was normal for him to work hard and achieve this result. Therefore, Ethan's suspicion was put to rest. Hermione was transformed back into a human by him and did not need to go to the hospital, but for the next month, she needed to pay attention to hiding her ears and tail. Harry and Ron returned soon, and their tricks were naturally in vain. For a whole hour, they only heard Draco complaining about why Harry was the heir and not him, and secretly complaining to Harry and Ron from beginning to end. Not only did they have to endure each other's face-to-face accusations, but to prevent exposure, they also had to nod in agreement and scold themselves. You can imagine how aggrieved they were. As a result, Draco suffered retribution the next day. He was attacked at the corner of the corridor and turned into a stone statue. This caused an uproar at Hogwarts, because he was the first pureblood to be attacked. Originally, people thought that the monster in the secret chamber wanted to get rid of the muggles and squibs in the castle. Now, even pureblood wizards have suffered. It's madness. Especially since Malfoy is the school director's son. This had to be taken seriously. It's not easy to get new books on the shelves, so please support with orders and ask for a wave of support, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. Please cast your votes for me, the author. Your support is incredibly important to me. Chapter 137. Since Malfoy's attack, Dumbledore has faced increasing pressure from the school board. They demanded he devise a plan to address the Chamber of Secrets issue promptly. Hogwarts was once again enveloped in panic. Amidst this turmoil, Lockhart seized the opportunity to declare his intention to become a beacon of hope. He announced he was preparing a surprise to uplift everyone's spirits. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, the students discovered Lockhart's plan. Early in the morning, hundreds of owls swarmed into the Great Hall, creating a canopy of gray-brown above. Instead of rain, feathers and droppings fell, nearly ruining breakfast. Ethan, quick to react, conjured a protective barrier over the Ravenclaw table, preserving a small oasis amidst the chaos. Consequently, students from all houses crowded around this single clean table. Lockhart, adorned in a bright pink robe, encouraged the students to decorate the Great Hall with the items delivered by the owls. Soon, the walls were plastered with large, garish pink flowers, and heart-shaped confetti continuously rained down from the light blue ceiling, transforming the hall into a scene reminiscent of a wedding. The freshly cleaned table was once again under siege, as confetti invaded the students' food, forcing everyone to seek refuge at the Ravenclaw table. While many students were less than thrilled, the little witches among them seemed to enjoy the romantic setup, embracing the Valentine's Day spirit, which in 1992 was a novelty. After the decorations were complete, Lockhart took the stage, silencing the crowd with a wave of his hand. "Happy Valentine's Day, everyone," he exclaimed, opening his arms wide. "You may now send me greeting cards. I will choose a lucky girl to receive my autograph," he announced, flashing his signature smile. The students' response was lukewarm, having grown skeptical of Lockhart's superficial charm over the semester. Undeterred by the tepid reaction, Lockhart cheekily warned the students not to neglect their other professors out of admiration for him, joking about not wanting to incite jealousy among his colleagues. He then introduced his next surprise. 12 dwarfs, each adorned with golden wings and carrying harps, entered the hall. These dwarfs, magical creatures known worldwide by various names, were tasked with delivering Valentine's Day cards throughout the school. Lockhart's attempt to dress them as cupids only added to their disgruntlement. Lockhart continued, pointing out Professor Sprout and suggesting students seek her out for romantic tokens, such as her secret roses or mistletoe, under which couples were rumored to kiss. Professor Sprout appeared embarrassed, while Snape sneered at the spectacle. Lockhart, unfazed, suggested asking Professor Snape for a potion to cure infatuation, praising his expertise despite Snape's evident disdain. Lockhart's flattery, however, seemed to miss its mark. Snape's mood darkened instantly, a peculiar gleam in his eyes suggesting that anyone daring to inquire about the creation of ecstasy might find themselves poisoned instead. Professor Flitwick, previously cheerful, suddenly covered his face with his hands, wishing to become invisible after Lockhart's comments. "If you're interested, Professor Flitwick is unparalleled in enchantment magic, that cunning old dog," Lockhart exclaimed. This prompted Professor McGonagall to stand and leave the auditorium hastily, avoiding Lockhart's attention. The atmosphere was ripe for confessions of love, akin to the safety net provided by April Fool's Day or a game of Truth or Dare, with many students, including Harry, Percy Weasley, and Cedric Diggory, sensing an opportunity. The female prefect, Penello, issued a stern warning against any demeaning Valentine's Day pranks, a sentiment echoed by Zhang Chu of Ravenclaw and Angelina of Gryffindor. Ethan, in agreement, cautiously observed some girls plotting their next move. "Let's find a safer place," Ethan suggested, quickly leading Siri and Hermione away. The idea of being the target of a dwarf's public love confession seemed as daunting as a public execution. Cedric, hoping for a private moment, found himself preemptively cornered by a dwarf. Contrary to some opinions, Cedric was not merely an admirer of Zhang Chu. He was quite popular, with a significant portion of his admirers being boys, reflecting the diverse preferences within their community. During one hectic hour, Cedric received numerous love letters from boys, while Harry faced a similar situation, albeit with letters predominantly from girls. The dwarf's relentless delivery of Valentine's cards, even during classes, tested the teacher's patience. Ethan, with his exceptional charm, attracted the most attention. In Charm's class alone, 12 dwarfs took turns reading him love letters, prompting him to reconsider his daily use of the Charm Human spell. Professor Flitwick, seeking to restore order, locked the classroom door, but the persistent dwarfs resorted to reciting cringe-worthy love poems from outside the window. In Transfiguration class, Ethan ingeniously adapted the druid's animal ignore technique into a dwarf ignore technique, rendering himself invisible to the dwarfs. However, the potion class with Professor Snape presented a new challenge. Snape, deviating from his usual demeanor, did not stop the dwarfs from disrupting the class. When Ethan attempted to use his wand, Snape deducted points from Ravenclaw and mockingly pretended to vomit, much to the Slytherin's amusement. Realizing that traditional methods wouldn't work and unable to use his wand, Ethan resorted to wandless magic. He harnessed his spiritual power to hypnotize the dwarfs, demonstrating his adaptability and resourcefulness in the face of adversity. Ethan plucked his harp and sang, "I have a singing Valentine's Day gift for Professor Snape." Snape was taken aback for a moment, his thoughts racing. Was he truly the target of this jest? Before he could gather his thoughts, the dwarf began to play the harp, leading the serenade with gusto. "Oh, Snape!" the other dwarfs echoed with a resounding "Oh!" "My dear old fellow," they continued, their voices blending in mock reverence. "Old man." "You are so handsome," they sang, admiration dripping with irony. "Oh, handsome." "Your hair is like the blackest raven," they crooned, the comparison drawing a chuckle. "Oh, crow." "You are as dark and dashing as Voldemort," they declared, the absurdity not lost on anyone. "Oh, so cool." "For Merlin's sake," they implored, invoking the legendary wizard. "Merlin." "You are mine," they professed, their declaration bold. "Mine." "You stupid old bat," they concluded, their insult veiled in a sing-song voice. "Old bat, bat." At the mention of Shen Feng Wu Ying, Snape's face darkened with fury. Yet, he managed to cling to a sliver of reason, channeling his anger into vanquishing the greeting card with a flick of his wand. The dwarfs, sensing the imminent danger, scurried away in haste, yet their spirits were undeterred. They positioned themselves in the corridor, continuing their serenade with a love song dedicated to Professor Snape, their voices echoing through the halls. The classroom was engulfed in an uneasy silence. The young wizards were itching to laugh, but restrained themselves, caught between amusement and fear. They dared not meet Snape's gaze, nor did they dare to look out the window, their curiosity piqued yet suppressed. Only Ethan watched the scene unfold with a secret delight, his amusement barely contained as he witnessed the spectacle, his plan unfolding just as he had hoped. Chapter 138. Although Ethan had successfully embarrassed Snape in class, his quest for revenge was far from over. After class, he hurried back to the Ravenclaw common room and rallied the younger wizards to write love letters to Snape. Ethan offered one sickle for each love letter that was successfully sent to Snape, demonstrating his willingness to use his financial resources for his cause. The Weasley twins, having profited handsomely from selling Ethan's amulets, were thrilled to invest in this new venture. Consequently, the unfortunate potions professor experienced what could only be described as a navy attack. Not just a single dwarf, but throughout the night, at least 2 owls hovered above him, each attempting to deliver love letters. Snape had no choice but to barricade himself in his office. In an unexpected turn of events, Lockhart's promise to boost morale at Hogwarts was fulfilled, albeit not in the manner he had anticipated. Initially, everyone used dwarfs to send love letters in a traditional manner, but by the afternoon, these letters had become instruments for pranks and playful attacks among the students, who thoroughly enjoyed themselves. Unfortunately, the joy of Valentine's Day was short-lived, vanishing after just one night. The day following Valentine's Day was a Saturday, coinciding with a scheduled Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. Close to 11 o'clock, the players from both teams entered the pitch to the thunderous applause of the audience. They took to the air on their broomsticks, circling the goalposts in a warm-up routine as Madame Hooch, the referee, released the balls into play. However, the atmosphere changed dramatically when Professor McGonagall, holding a large purple microphone, made her way across the pitch. Ethan's heart sank at the sight. "The game is cancelled," announced Professor McGonagall, her voice echoing through the microphone to the dismayed crowd. The audience expressed their displeasure with boos and shouts, and the Ravenclaw players were visibly disheartened. Gryffindor's Oliver Wood approached McGonagall, hoping to reason with her, but to no avail. Professor McGonagall continued, "All students must return to their house common rooms immediately. Your head of house will provide further information. Please leave as soon as possible." Back in the Ravenclaw common room, the mood was somber. Roger, among others, was particularly upset about the cancellation of the game. Professor Flitwick then announced the school's emergency measures. All classes would now require a teacher escort, all Quidditch practices and matches were suspended, and no evening activities were allowed. Students were to return to their common rooms by 7 o'clock each evening and were not permitted to leave the dormitories after that time, nor use the restroom without a teacher present. The reason for these drastic measures soon became clear. "It is our house, Ravenclaw, that has been attacked this time." Marietta Edgecombe was petrified. Professor Flitwick revealed, his voice heavy with concern. Behind him, Marietta's friend, Cho Chang, returned to the common room in tears, having just visited Marietta. Ethan immediately approached Cho for details. Through her sobs, Cho explained that Marietta had been attacked near Lockhart's office. She was determined to send a love letter to Lockhart this morning, having missed the opportunity yesterday. She's always been his most loyal admirer. It's tragic that she became a victim in this way, Cho recounted. From Cho's fragmented account, Ethan pieced together the events leading to the attack. Fortunately, Marietta had purchased one of Ethan's amulets at Cho's insistence. It seemed the amulet had played a crucial role, allowing Marietta to sense danger in advance. Like Justin Finch Fletchley before her, Marietta had clutched the amulet tightly in her hand before being petrified, which likely saved her from a worse fate. She had the presence of mind not to turn around rashly, but instead Ethan grasped the metal door handle of Lockhart's office, catching a glimpse of the attacker's reflection. Yet, what good did this knowledge do? Attacks at Hogwarts persisted, and the perpetrator remained at large for an extended period. Many young wizards feared the school might close. During dinner, Hermione discreetly approached Ethan, sharing that she had learned from Myrtle about an incident 50 years prior that might involve Hagrid. She planned to venture into the Forbidden Forest with Harry to seek Hagrid's insights. "It's unfortunate that Ron has been unusually sleepy these past few days and can't join us," Hermione remarked, a hint of regret in her voice. Ethan couldn't help but think cynically that Ron's lethargy was due to his control over the basilisk, causing it to roam the school. It was an absurd notion, lacking any concrete evidence, but Ethan couldn't shake it off. Regardless, he decided to venture into the Forbidden Forest that night, hoping to gather information from the unicorns and centaurs. Given that the basilisk, once freed, would need to feed and with no students missing, only petrified, it logically sought sustenance in the Forbidden Forest. Initially, Ethan had no interest in dealing with the basilisk. It wasn't a candidate for his animagus transformation, nor did he need its magical components urgently. However, seeing Hermione's determination to confront the heir and recalling Zhang-Chu's distress over Marietta's lack of friendship, despite Marietta's persistent pursuit, stirred something in him. Moreover, Ethan had deduced that the diary's controller had shifted from Ginny to Ron, indicating a deviation from the original storyline. To prevent unforeseen consequences, Ethan resolved to act. After dinner, Ethan employed the advanced invisibility technique to conceal his presence and headed towards the forbidden forest. Upon reaching its edge, he sensed an increased danger. The forest, shrouded in darkness despite the bright moon, seemed more menacing than before. The advanced invisibility technique, superior to simple invisibility, allowed Ethan to cast basic spells while hidden. He used the dancing light technique to light his path, but the sight that greeted him was grim. Despite it being spring, the forest resembled autumn with its dead branches and leaves. The number of deceased animals and bloody remnants suggested a predator's presence. As Ethan ventured deeper, the silence became oppressive, and the sight of gnarled, dead trees sent shivers down his spine. It's only been 2 weeks since I've been here, and the forbidden forest has transformed so drastically, he thought, anxiety mounting. He quickened his pace towards the unicorn lair, relieved to find that the desolation was confined to the forest's outer and middle layers. In the forbidden forest, the deeper ecology remained untouched and unharmed. The unicorn lair retained its beauty and tranquility. Sensing Ethan's aura upon his arrival at the lake, Larry leaped up in greeting. Chapter 139. Ethan, you finally came to see me. Larry looked very excited when she saw Ethan's figure. She jumped up and rubbed against him, nearly causing him to fall. Sorry, Larry, I'm late, Ethan apologized, stroking the unicorn's head and arranging her mane. Several little unicorns also gathered around, circling Ethan, some holding berries in their mouths, wanting to entertain him. Their innocent actions almost overwhelmed Ethan with their cuteness. After attending to the unicorns, Ethan inquired, On my way here, I noticed that the forbidden forest is in a dire state. There are dead trees and animals everywhere. What happened? That monster is responsible. I sensed your presence shortly after you started school, but it has only recently become active, Larry explained with a mix of sadness and fear. Fortunately, our home is well hidden, so it hasn't come close. But if this continues, the basilisk will eventually find this place, Ethan whispered, concerned. Indeed, Larry agreed, lowering her head before looking up at Ethan with her beautiful eyes. Ethan, I know this is a lot to ask, but can you help me? Her voice was soft, her tone pitiful. Meeting her gaze, Ethan felt a rush of guilt. What are you talking about, Larry? He said, hugging her neck tightly. Don't worry, we're good friends. Whatever you need, I'll do it. Really? Larry's head shot up in surprise. You're amazing, Ethan. Her happiness was infectious, and she began licking Ethan's face, leaving it wet. A little unicorn joined in, licking his hand. Okay, Larry, that's enough, Ethan said after a while, managing to calm her enthusiasm. Have you ever thought about moving from here? Move? Is that what you're suggesting? Larry seemed to grasp the idea. Yes, Ethan nodded, but I promise, you can always come back. The place I've prepared for you is safe, with no monsters, no dangers, and plenty of food. It's actually near my house. The habitat Ethan had prepared was the large forest surrounding the tower in his demiplane. Larry understood immediately. So, you want us to move near your home? Okay, I'd like to be neighbors with Ethan. Ethan was surprised by her easy agreement. He had long wanted to relocate some magical creatures from the Forbidden Forest to his own, but lacked a reason or method. Larry and the little unicorns' willingness to move was an excellent start. Unicorns, being lords of the forest, would attract other magical creatures, fulfilling Ethan's long-held wish. Did you not think it over before agreeing? What if I were lying? What if the place isn't as wonderful as you imagine? Ethan asked, a bit taken aback by her trust. But Ethan doesn't lie, Larry stated confidently. If Ethan says it, then I believe it. If Ethan wants to be neighbors with Larry, then Larry will be there. Moved by the unicorn's trust, Ethan hugged her. Ethan gently reassured Larry, Don't worry, Larry, I'll take good care of you. With that, he led Larry and the little unicorns, employing the mansion technique. In moments, they found themselves in a new realm. The vegetation, though not as lush as the Forbidden Forest, and lacking its diversity, presented a serene beauty. The trees thrived, and the woodland creatures, with their glossy fur and joyful demeanors, added to the charm. An inquisitive evil bird even flew overhead. However, the excessive growth hinted at a potential turn towards a wild, untamed nature, threatening to transform this place into a perilous jungle. Central to this vibrant ecosystem was a massive oak tree near a tower, radiating a natural aura far surpassing that of the Forbidden Forest. This connection made Lara feel a deep sense of belonging, believing that living here could enhance her powers beyond her parents. Yet, she also recognized the dangers of unchecked natural forces. As unicorns, guardians of the forest and stewards of nature, they had a duty to nurture this sanctuary. Lara's resolve solidified, grateful to Ethan for this opportunity. "Thank you, Ethan, for letting us live here," she joyfully pledged. "Don't worry, Ethan. We'll take care of the woods for you." Ethan, content with the arrangement, bid farewell to the unicorns and made his way back to the Forbidden Forest, pleased to have relocated the unicorns to the demiplane. However, he lamented Larry's limited knowledge about the basilisk's condition and decided to seek information from the centaurs. Navigating through the familiar terrain towards Centaur Valley, Ethan encountered Ronan, a centaur with striking red hair and a glossy brown coat. "Oh, Ronan, good evening," Ethan greeted him warmly, their long acquaintance making formalities unnecessary. Ronan, showing deep respect, replied, "Hello, dear son of destiny." Despite Ethan's insistence on informality, his aid to Daisy in becoming a druid had earned him immense respect among the centaurs. Curious about Ethan's visit, Ronan inquired if he was there to see Daisy. Ethan clarified his primary interest in the Forbidden Forest's monster, mentioning Daisy as an aside. Ronan offered to guide Ethan, sharing troubling news of the monster's increased activity and appetite, causing havoc in the forest. He noted the creature's cunning in avoiding the centaurs, thanks to Ethan's gift of a rooster, which seemed to deter it. However, the situation was unsustainable, and Daisy sought to discuss it with Ethan. Suddenly, the tranquility was shattered by a commotion in the distance. Birds took flight in a panic, their erratic paths signaling escape, and one abruptly plummeted to the ground, followed by the sound of chaotic footsteps. The noise grew louder and louder, interrupting Ethan and Ronan's conversation. Ethan drew his arcane sword, his gaze fixed warily in the direction of the sound. Ronan, with a swift motion, straightened up, bent his bow, nocked an arrow, and stepped forward, positioning himself protectively in front of Ethan. The sound of chaos approached rapidly, and acromantulas, massive as millstones, surged forward, their large claws clicking menacingly. Their dark, hairy legs twisted rapidly, and their 8 eyes were wide open in panic. However, these dangerous creatures seemed not to be hunting but fleeing for their lives, with even more formidable predators in pursuit. As the acromantulas hurtled towards Ethan in their panic, he braced himself for action. Suddenly, a wall of thorns sprang up in front of him, effectively blocking the path of the acromantulas. A cheerful shout followed from behind. "Go away, you nasty spiders. You are not welcome here." The leading acromantula, upon hearing this, immediately veered off, ignoring Ethan and the others, and fled around the thorn wall. Turning around, Ethan saw a beautiful centaur approaching. She had a cyan horse body, rainbow-colored hair, and a tail, adorned with a wreath of thorns on her head. In her hand, she held a wooden staff, and she wore a small vest decorated with feathers, showcasing her strong, fit physique. "Daisy," Ethan called out, waving to the centaur. "Little teacher, you finally came to see me." The centaur, Daisy, exclaimed as she ran up to Ethan and lifted him effortlessly, as though he were a child. The only awkward aspect of a man and a centaur standing together was the significant difference in their heights. Chapter 140. Ronan, a proud centaur, possesses a worldly wisdom that rivals any human's. Observing the intimate reunion of the two individuals before him, and noting that the man responsible for scaring off the 8-eyed spider showed no interest in pursuit, Ronan maintained his distance. "Since Lord Ethan has been safely delivered, I will take my leave now," he announced, then quietly exited the scene, embodying the essence of a wise individual who understands the importance of timing. "Okay, Daisy, that's enough." Ethan finally managed to extricate himself from the warm embrace of the centaur woman and planted his feet firmly on the ground. "I'm not a child anymore." Ronan saw everything. Daisy giggled, touching the back of her head. "Hey, it's because you never visit me. I miss you." Ethan couldn't help but wonder how he had failed to see Daisy's strength and optimism before. Becoming a druid had truly allowed her to embrace her true nature, though it seemed to have also infused her with a certain naivety. "All right, so Ronan mentioned you've been wanting to discuss the basilisk with me?" Ethan inquired. "Yes," Daisy nodded vigorously. "We were managing with the rooster you sent us, but recently the basilisk has become too bold. If we don't address this issue soon, we'll all be in danger." "Let's talk specifics in my cabin," she suggested, stepping in front of Ethan and slightly bending her knees, indicating he should mount. Ethan blinked in surprise. "You mean, ride you? Isn't that disrespectful? I've heard centaurs consider such behavior an insult." Daisy dismissed the concern with a wave of her hand. "Only old-timers like Bane think that way. Besides, considering our relationship, should we really be bothered by such formalities?" Convinced by her logic, Ethan climbed onto the centaur's back. "Then I won't stand on ceremony." As Daisy galloped away, Ethan quickly realized the ride was going to be uncomfortable. Without a saddle or mane to hold onto, and with Daisy's energetic and bouncy gait, he struggled to find something to grasp. Resisting the urge to grab anything inappropriate, Ethan used magic to fashion Daisy's recently grown hair into a ponytail, which he then used as a makeshift handle. Arriving at a large wooden house built against a tall oak tree next to the valley, Ethan was introduced to Daisy's home. After becoming a druid, Daisy had moved away from the centaur tribe, not due to any conflict, but because her prestige among them had grown to rival that of their leader, Marjorie. Druids, with their magical services, were invaluable to the centaurs, offering knowledge on which plants were poisonous, aiding in breeding, planting, medical treatment, and even stargazing with spells to clear the skies. Daisy's transformation from a rebellious girl to a respected strong woman was remarkable. However, she knew that to maintain and further this respect, she couldn't confine herself to the tribe. She needed to live in harmony with nature and seek continuous growth. Ethan remembered the determination in Daisy's eyes when she made this decision, a testament to her unwavering resolve. She announced to him that she was moving. Ethan hadn't expected this centaur girl, once unrecognized, could actually forsake a life of constant flattery and luxury. From this perspective, she indeed seemed perfectly suited for the druid profession. Reflecting on this, Ethan took another look at the centaur girl who was parked in front of the wooden house, happily prancing around. Sometimes he really doubted whether they were the same person. "Hey, hey, little teacher, we are here!" Daisy turned around and reminded him cheerfully. "Hey, seeing Larry drive you around every day made me want to do this for a long time." After Ethan dismounted, the female centaur circled around him, looking eager to try. Through this experience, Daisy fully understood why the proud unicorn was willing to carry him every day. Being ridden was like being able to openly stick to the little teacher for a few moments. Occasionally, with a bump, she could feel Ethan's body pressed against her back. That feeling, she wouldn't tire of it, no matter how many times it happened. Does Ruitai not have enough friends, so she eats alone? That's bad, Daisy thought. Next time, I'll give the little teacher a ride, she declared seriously. Then you'd better tie your hair back in advance next time, Ethan agreed, albeit reluctantly. He felt that his interactions with the opposite sex lately always ended with him being somewhat passive. This made him a bit uncomfortable. I need to act stronger, he thought as he followed Daisy into the wooden house. The wooden house was surprisingly spacious, both in height and area, much larger than it appeared from the outside. This was all thanks to the space extension spell Ethan had cast. In fact, Ethan was deeply involved in Daisy's move and the establishment of her new home. The tall oak tree had been grown by Ethan himself, a task he undertook as her apprentice. Daisy had Ethan sit down on a wicker chair and made a pot of scented tea. Speaking of which, why haven't we seen Larry today? Daisy found it strange. Usually Ethan would visit the unicorn first, then ride him to visit her. Could it be that the little teacher visited me first today? She asked, hopeful. But Ethan shook his head, dispelling her fantasy. No, actually I went to visit Larry first, but to protect him from the basilisk, I helped him move. Move? Where to? Daisy asked curiously. To a demiplane. Think of it as a separate little world, specifically near my home, Ethan explained. Upon hearing this, Daisy immediately pouted. Little teacher, you're too kind to just one, she protested. There are so many creatures attacked by basilisks. Why do you only care about unicorns? No, I also want to live with the little teacher. No, I also want to be the little teacher's neighbor. Daisy quickly corrected herself, abandoning her usual tomboy demeanor to plead like a little girl. Ethan couldn't help but smile. Don't be willful, Daisy. What about your people if you move there? You can't expect them to fend off a basilisk with just a rooster, right? But, Daisy pouted, her bright pink pupils shimmering with an aggrieved expression. She struggled to hold back tears. Despite her tomboyish nature, she insisted on playing the role of a damsel in distress in front of him, which was uncharacteristic for Daisy. Ethan pondered for a moment and then proposed, "How about this? I'll arrange a passage directly to my house, and you and I will become neighbors. How does that sound?" Upon hearing this, Daisy immediately brightened up. "Is this really okay?" she asked excitedly. "Do you still doubt me?" Ethan replied with a smile. He then went outside to the oak tree, where Daisy handed him some mushroom spores. Under her curious gaze, he sprinkled them on the ground and used natural magic to accelerate their growth. Soon, these spores matured into a complete mushroom circle. This phenomenon, also known as a fairy or goblin circle, arises from the radial growth of mushroom mycelium from a central point. As the mycelium expands outward, the central and older hyphae die off, leaving a vibrant ring of mycelium that eventually forms a circle of mushrooms. While mushroom circles are a natural occurrence, they hold special significance in natural magic. Ethan planted one such circle beneath Daisy's oak tree. He then took a piece of mycelium from this circle, used the mansion technique to transport it to his demiplane, and planted it under a towering oak tree there. Through natural magic, he catalyzed the growth of another mushroom circle. This act created two genetically identical circles. As the natural ritual progressed, spatial ripples appeared at the center of the circle. Daisy, observing the same phenomena, stepped into the mushroom circle and found herself transported to a vast tower where Ethan greeted her with a smile. "How about that? Not too shabby, right?" Ethan began, but before he could finish, Daisy scooped him up in her arms. "Little teacher, you're so good to me." Ethan, now in Daisy's embrace, could smell the floral and woody fragrance on her, though he found the sensation of her chest against him somewhat uncomfortable. After a moment, Daisy set him down. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked. "Uh-huh." Daisy nodded eagerly. "Then, let's discuss the basilisk. I can help you with it. However, as the centaur's main force against the basilisk, I need information from you," Ethan said. "Little teacher, just ask. I'll tell you everything," Daisy responded with a smile. The centaur tribe, grateful for Ethan's help, was willing to fulfill any request he made. Ethan inquired, "During your recent patrols in the Forbidden Forest, have you seen a little red-haired wizard?" "A red-haired wizard?" Daisy pondered, tilting her head. "What does he look like?" "He has freckles and looks quite ordinary, and a big nose," Ethan described. After a moment of thought, Daisy nodded. "Yes, I think I've seen such a wizard several times." "That's right," she exclaimed, suddenly recalling. "Every time I've seen that wizard, it's been after the basilisk caused havoc." "Indeed, it was him," Ethan confirmed. With this information, he could start planning to address the issue, starting with Ron. However, the threat of the basilisk, which could kill with its gaze, was not to be underestimated. The Petrified Eye, a level 9 druid spell capable of turning beings to stone, paled in comparison to the basilisk's power. Moreover, the basilisk was aided by a young Voldemort, enhancing its threat. Ethan could have faced the basilisk alone by blindfolding himself and using his psychic powers to navigate the battle. A young Voldemort, despite being immune to some spells in his spectral state, wouldn't pose a significant threat to Ethan alone. However, the combination of Voldemort and the basilisk presented a formidable challenge, compensating for each other's weaknesses. Faced with this duo, Ethan knew he had to be exceedingly cautious. He now had a specific plan in mind, reminiscent of strategies familiar to players of Baldur's Gate 3. In the tale of Hagman's House in the Underdark, the mushroom circle stands out as particularly impressive. The image captures Daisy in her human form. Finding her centaur form proved too challenging, so this image should serve as a reference for her upper body.